Chapter 2189. Run, run with all her might, following the mini drone that pointed to the exit. She believed that Z wouldn't lie to her about this. Z was such a person, no, such a half-human, half-machine guy. She actually hated him. It was like instinct. She wanted to escape. That pair of quick-witted eyes that were like clear water silently looked at those things that might be white, gray, or turbid in his eyes. It was like a clean mirror standing in front of him, reflecting his clown-like self in a simple and unadorned mirror. Pant. Running with all her might brought about rapid exhaustion of stamina, suffocating dizziness, and nausea. She had to stop. It was already far away, and it should be close to the exit. Soon, the mini-drone was also flying towards the bright exit. She crawled up from the ground and ran for her life again, but she had no choice but to stop in front of the exit. This was because she saw a familiar person here. Cats. After they followed Gamma into the experimental field, Cats, who had completely lost contact with it, actually appeared in front of her at this time. This was the exit of the experimental field, which was the platform of the experimental field they came from. Was it Cats who finally found this position? When she saw Cats, the armored man had obviously seen her and quickly walked in front of her. Since she had chosen to escape from that place and didn't even mention anyone in the team, she obviously didn't intend to have anything to do with them. At this moment, facing Cats who was walking straight, Remia had a feeling that it was difficult to deal with. Z and the others seemed to be the type who cared about their companions quite a lot. They probably didn't like the behavior of abandoning their companions. Cats. Remia took the lead to call out the other party's name. Her face was surprised, happy, and anxious. Great, you're here. Z and everyone else are trapped inside. Quickly go and save them. The armored man had already arrived in front of Remia, but he didn't take any further action. Cats. Mister? After all, this was just a walking armor. It probably couldn't even be considered a living creature. However, Remia clearly felt that there was really a pair of eyes in the eye sockets of the armor mask that was sizing her up. So, you just casually gave up on those who helped you before? It wasn't Mr. Katz's voice. Remia's expression changed slightly. It wasn't Mr. Katz's voice. The voice seemed to be coming from behind Mr. Katz, and she seemed to have heard this voice somewhere before. Who's there? Remia was shocked and hurriedly took 2 steps back. There was a chuckle, and then a figure slowly walked out from behind the armored man's huge body. Seeing this, Remia's eyes suddenly narrowed, and she exclaimed in disbelief. You are Miss Huang. At this time, the person said slowly, let me give you a suggestion. If I were you, I wouldn't plan to leave this place. In the gloomy platform, something seemed to be moving. The repair is complete. It took 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 29 seconds. Miss Gamma wasn't very interested in this set of numbers. After carefully observing her broken eyes and confirming that they had been completely repaired, she turned off the intelligent medical program. In the process of treatment, she also narrowed her eyes slightly. At this time, her mental state was quite good. Turn on the monitor and search for the location of Z, Remia, and Yulia. In an instant, the position of the 3 groups of people appeared on the screen. Senior Yulia was lying in the confinement room, and it seemed that she had not yet woken up from the electric shock. But the current location of Z and Remia made Miss Gamma frown slightly. Remia is not in the room, but it is also a public area where activities are allowed. Instead, a Z. Looking at the trajectory of Z on the screen, Miss Gamma quickly pressed a button and asked directly, Z, where are you going? The Z on the screen did not change, and there was no special expression on his face. He said slowly, patrol. Patrol? Gamma was a little surprised, but also nodded. But she shouldn't have given the order to patrol. Z's brain nerves are very complicated. His body structure is also very complicated. Z's body, to be precise, is a symbiotic body of human and machine that can grow naturally, Such a structure, even before the destruction of civilization, could not be achieved. But Z was born, and with it there were also the seeds of the Z series, which all benefited from Gaia's godlike ability. "I'll be back soon." The voice of Z sounded again. "No, if you want to patrol, then continue to patrol." Miss Gamma shook her head, and then bit her lips lightly, as if hesitating. After a while, she whispered, "After the patrol, come to my room and find me. Continue the previous simulation training. I will be ready this time." "Understood," Z replied calmly. Miss Gamma sighed slowly and cut off the communication. She sat in front of the console, and her good mental state seemed to become sluggish all of a sudden. "Bring up the map of the test site," Miss Gamma said again. On the screen, a map of the entire test site appeared and began to overlap with the position of Z at this time. Sure enough, it seems to be approaching intentionally or unintentionally. Miss Gamma muttered to herself, "Is this some kind of instinct, or, because of the relationship created by her power, so they are attracted to each other? I hope it's not." A moment later, Miss Gamma walked out of the treatment room. Before returning to her room to prepare for the simulation training, she had to go to the biological laboratory. Although she has been carrying out the necessary courses with Yulia and Remia during this period of time, she has not let go of other research. For example, the sexless Madanzo, such as Ichintian, are obviously unreasonable creatures. As for the talking Taramaru and Bluebird, they are still acceptable. After all, they are originally creatures, just thinking and talking, which can be seen as the evolution of creatures. If there is no gender, then what do you use to reproduce? Division? While thinking about the mystery of Madanzo's body, Miss Gamma went directly into the biological laboratory, but at this time, she frowned subconsciously. Because the container used to close Madanzo was empty at this time, Madanzo disappeared. Except for Madanzo, the rest are still there. Miss Gamma was shocked and instinctively wanted to withdraw from the laboratory. When she turned around, a small figure appeared in front of her. "Madanzo, are you awake?" "Yes, if you don't wake up, I'm afraid you're going to be cut into pieces for research, aren't you?" "How did you get out?" This question is a little complicated. The young man in front of him showed a bright smile and gestured with his hands. Probably flying from one place to another with a whoosh sound, and then flying back to this world from that place with a whoosh sound, something like that. Miss Gamma was unusually calm. She was about to speak. Unexpectedly, Madanzo suddenly took action. She took something and stuffed it directly into Gamma's mouth. "This place is probably voice-controlled?" Madanzo smiled and quickly hit Gamma's stomach, making Gamma bend down in pain. "Then I can't let you talk for now." Gamma didn't expect that Madanzo, a short guy in his teens, would be so terrible. This guy's skill, as if he had been tempered 1,000 times, could completely suppress himself with a weak strength. Until her hands were tied and her body was tied, Miss Gamma still had an unreal feeling. Madanzo was standing in front of Miss Gamma with a pipe in his mouth. He seemed to be thinking about something, sometimes frowning, sometimes fiddling with the console. "It's hard to do. It seems that this place is not controlled by anyone except your voice." Madanzo sighed at this time. "That's the case, but for the sake of safety, I can't let you have a chance to speak, but in this way I can't ask." "There's a way." Then, under Gamma's incredible eyes, Madanzo picked up the chair directly and began to smash it down on the console. After a few hits in the face, sparks were flying on the console. Miss Gamma reacted and immediately showed a look of horror. She wanted to stop it, but she was trapped and couldn't move. The perfect way to lurk without being discovered is to kill all the people inside. It's the same. Madanzo squinted and laughed. "Smash it to pieces and lose control, and I can let you talk." "It's not the same, okay." Miss Gamma stared angrily, but she could only make a whining sound. But Madanzo was obviously not satisfied with just smashing the console, and even began to connect the cables in the room. Until the sound of buzzing suddenly sounded, and the whole experiment field suddenly lit up with a red light of music warning. The screen on the console flashed wildly, chaotic, as if it was poisoned. Madanzo was satisfied and pulled out the cloth ball used to plug Gamma's mouth. That should be about it. You're crazy, Madanzo said coldly. This base-like place also uses eternal power, right? Miss Gamma suddenly looked stunned. Madanzo said calmly, It seems to be. But it's not hard to guess. After all, the world has been abandoned for countless years, but it can still function normally. Ordinary energy probably can't last until now. Tell me, where is eternal power? I mean, Gaia. I don't know. It doesn't matter if you don't know. Madanzo shrugged. There will always be someone who knows, for example. Z, how can you? Miss Gamma finally couldn't keep calm and was a little lost. How do you know that? Madanzo shook his head. In fact, it's also a guess. However, Z will definitely find Gaia, which is probably the fate that the world needs. Let me go. You can't let Z. Madanzo pressed several places on Gamma's neck with her fingers at the same time, which made her suddenly faint. Absolutely not, that is to say, capital can. Madanzo chuckled. I'm also a little destroyer. After thinking for a while, Metatro casually released Fairskiu and the others who were imprisoned inside before he left. However, they were still unconscious. Madanzo didn't plan to wake up, so he just left it. The ear-piercing buzzing sound did not stop. The door of the confinement room seemed to be convulsing as it kept opening, closing, opening, and closing. The confinement room was dark red, but senior sister, Yulia, was still lying on the bed, not moving at all. Then, a short and small figure appeared in front of her. If you don't get up, I'll block the door. You'll suffocate to death here. Senior sister, Yulia, who was lying on the bed, instantly opened her eyes, and her face was filled with surprise. Senior, are you here to save me? Don't pretend, Madanzo said angrily, but speaking of which, you can really pretend to be dead. The door is obviously open. Although it's a little convulsive, you can still hold it and don't move. I just want to lie down in this page world. Although this damn place isn't a high-energy dangerous world, there are fatal dangers everywhere. The sword that will come from Miss Maid and is called, You're Going to Die, Lady Nan, is hanging above my head all the time. Senior, what should we do now? She could only pretend that she didn't hear Madanzo's mockery, and asked seriously. Madanzo didn't tease her anymore. She thought for a while and said, The Book of Gaia is beginning to react, and it should be entering the key point. Also, Morrigan seems to have appeared. Yulia was slightly shocked. Where is she? It's just the reaction of the other half of the book in my hand. Madanzo shrugged. But since we have the other half of the book in our hands, Morrigan is probably the same in this world. Everyone is on the same starting line, and it's 2 against 1. If we meet, we won't be afraid at all. Okay. Senior sister, Yulia, quickly nodded and said, Senior, I will wave the flag for you with all my might when the time comes. Shout. Madanzo glanced at Yulia and suddenly asked curiously, Newbies, don't tell me they're all trash like you. Yulia said awkwardly, This. Senior, why don't you ask the boss yourself? There's a chance. Madanzo didn't say anything and then said directly, Come, let's go find Izzy and the female protagonist. There was still an ear-piercing buzzing sound. In the tunnel, Izzy looked around, suddenly squatted down, and then punched the metal floor. One punch after another, the floor began to sink and change shape. Finally, the entire floor fell off, and Izzy immediately fell to the lower level. Chapter 2190. On the way, Madanzo briefly explained his experience of escaping. It was a very simple way, through the Book of Gaia to another page world, and then back again. Between going and going back, with a little mistake, he successfully escaped from the imprisonment. You should have done this earlier, Senpai. Well, something happened, so it was a little delayed. Let's deal with the things here first. Madanzo suddenly stopped at this time, because at this time there was a violent sound, like the sound of some kind of explosion. Yulia suddenly had an ominous premonition, and subconsciously said, "Senpai, what else did you do?" Madanzo quickly went through the lines he connected in the control room. At this time, he shook his head with a sincere face. "No, I just simply escaped. Lying is going to hell. I'm afraid you want to go to hell anyway?" Yulia squinted her eyes and she also shook her head. "I don't know what Kerrigan will do. Since she's already here, maybe it's her. It must be." The angelic boy had a look of certainty. Yulia at this time pulled Madanzo's hand, pulled him into a passage, and said directly, "Go this way." During this time, Gamma has been giving me and Remia free space to move freely. Yulia said, "The environment here is roughly known. Those areas where we can move freely naturally will not have any secrets. Now, this is the area that was previously forbidden to enter, just right now we can explore it." She was awakened by the shrill sound of the alarm. After waking up, the whole world seemed to be a mess. Looking at the dark red flashing control room, Gamma went from shock to anger in just a short second. She quickly got up and ran to the console to see if there was any way to save it. However, the result was obviously very bad. She couldn't even summon the center of the experiment field, which meant that she had almost zero control over the experiment field. In the inner room, several glass cabins had been broken. Other than Madanzo, the other 3 Chintian had fallen to the ground, or rather, they were lying in a pool of blood. That is? Suddenly, Miss Gamma's face changed again, because she found that in addition to the 3 strange creatures, there was another person she was familiar with, who also fell into a pool of blood. Remia. He was one of the few survivors of the human race. The mission of human continuity forced Miss Gamma to rush to the side of Remia without much thought. She could not let any human being disappear in front of her eyes. As for why Remia was here, it was no longer within the scope of consideration. "Remia, how are you?" In a panic, Miss Gamma lifted Remia up and held her in her arms. The girl's clothes were stained with blood, and she could not wake up no matter how she shook. "Wait. I'll take you to the treatment room right away. I won't let you die." Miss Gamma gritted her teeth, put Remia's arm on her shoulder, and lifted Remia up. At this moment, a piercing pain came, almost making her brain blank. "Remy? Yeah? I'm sorry, Miss Gamma. How did you?" She felt a push, and she was pushed to the ground by Remia, who had suddenly woken up. At the same time, there was a sharp piece of glass in Miss Gamma's abdomen. She looked at the girl in front of her in disbelief, as if she could not understand why the other party's eyes could be so cold. "I can't go back." At this time, the girl stabbed something again, once on Miss Gamma's abdomen. She put her arms around Miss Gamma's neck, and stabbed her again and again with no expression on her face. She stood up, silently watching the pool of blood under Gamma begin to expand, watching Gamma's body twitch, and then turn away. He looked around the environment, and all around, it was a scenery he had never seen before. It was as if he had entered another world, a world like a courtyard. Z raised his head. In the azure sky there was an irregular hole. It was the place where he fell, or rather, the place where he broke through. The sky was not as high as he had imagined. It was just a simulation of the sky. In the courtyard, the shade was green, the flowers were like brocade, and even the breeze was completely different from the gentleness of the outside world. This was a spring-like beauty that only existed in the past history of human beings that he had collected. Z lingered in this scenery that he had never seen before, and gradually became absent-minded. Unknowingly, he had already gone deep into this place. On the way, Z saw some interesting things. Many strange creatures. These creatures were like specimens, placed in cylindrical containers. They grew on the grass, and the base was even covered with moss. Some of them were even directly covered by plants, and they needed to be pulled apart to be seen clearly. Creatures. Creatures like monsters. Or, it would be more appropriate to call them specimens. There was a white guy that looked like a tiger but was much bigger than a tiger. There was also a strange guy that was like a snake but had 4 limbs and 5 claws, 2 horns on the head, and was completely golden. Z even saw a strange black substance like fog. He even saw a 4-meter-tall blue giant. Under the base of the container containing the strange creature specimens, there seemed to be a code. He wanted to see more carefully, so he squatted down in front of the blue giant's container base, and reached out to touch the moss on the base. But at this moment Z seemed to feel something. His eyes focused, and his body nimbly turned over and jumped back. In the forest, a man in a silver robe appeared out of nowhere. The man was slender, and his long hair hung down to his waist. It was a rare silver-white hair. He was smiling at Z didn't feel any sense of danger from such a smile. Z couldn't help but frown and asked subconsciously, "You are. You can call me Essential." The man smiled again and walked slowly, "Or you can call me Cicero." Z took a step back, but his body didn't relax. "You are Gamma's father?" "Sorry, I'm not." The man shook his head. "I'm just set to look like Dr. Cicero. Of course, because the doctor used himself as the model to create me, we are basically similar in some aspects. For example, this appearance. Of course, if you don't like it, I can change into another appearance. It's very simple. After all, I'm just a projection talking to you. Do you have any special requirements? For example, a beautiful girl with long legs, or a young widow whose husband has just died?" "That's it. A male is good." Z shook his head. Besides, this guy was a little talkative. Probably because he hadn't spoken for a long time, Z suddenly had a feeling. He looked around again and muttered, "Where is this place?" "One of Dr. Cicero's most important experimental sites." Cicero, in front of him, said slowly, "It's also one of his earliest laboratories. Here, there are many inspirations of the doctor. The specimens you see now are also one of his inspirations. Of course, they are just conceptual prototypes, embryonic forms, and there's still a long way to go before they are born." "I'm here to find someone," Z said suddenly. "I know." Cicero nodded. "The person you are looking for is Miss Gaia, right? Where is she?" Z asked without hesitation. "I can take you to Miss Gaia." Cicero's expression was calm, but he said, "But, before that, you need to answer me a question. Why are you looking for Miss Gaia?" "I don't know." Z shook his head directly. "I just feel that I need to find her." "I see." Cicero looked thoughtful. He didn't say anything else, just turned around and walked further inside silently. He didn't ask Z to follow, but he didn't ask him not to follow either. Z walked a few steps faster and caught up with Cicero's footstep. He was about to speak. At this moment, Cicero suddenly asked, "Do you know what your name is?" Cicero shook his head. "What I'm talking about is your original name, not your name after you've been modified. Also, how much do you remember about the past?" "I don't remember." Z shook his head. "Do you want to know?" Cicero suddenly blinked his eyes. Z nodded. "I'm not telling you." Cicero's face showed a faint smile. His personality seemed to be a little bad. The creator, the real Dr. Cicero, probably had such a personality? Z wasn't angry, just nodded and said simply, "Okay." Boring. Cicero suddenly sighed. "I just want to say more. I can't tell you my name. Even I don't know why I can't tell you. Your name seems to be like a taboo that can't be mentioned." "Why?" Z couldn't help but frown. "I already said that I don't know." Cicero shook his head again. "But I can tell you about your predecessor before you were modified. Z, you are the last human male who still has the ability to reproduce." Z said indifferently, "Gamma has already told me. You are the heir of the last empire of humans, the infinite son of stars, the original source of all things. Speak human language. That's official language. Z shook his head. There's more. Cicero asked curiously, why, you don't seem to feel anything about this identity that once stood at the top of billions of creatures. Are you not interested? Z said very seriously, the humans outside are almost extinct. I am not standing at the top of billions of monsters now. Instead, I have to avoid their hunting. Cicero showed a distressed expression and suddenly said, here, I have a sentence that my master once said. It seems to be about you in the past. Z seemed to be willing to listen. Cicero cleared his throat and his eyes suddenly became hazy. As long as your highness is willing, all things will probably shine with their original brilliance again. After saying that, he looked at Z. His gaze didn't seem to be the original him, but another one, the one who created it. Time and space seemed to be misplaced. At the end of time, someone was silently looking at Z. Are you willing? Cicero finally stared into Z's eyes and asked softly. Willing what? Z frowned after a while. At this moment, Cicero's eyes gradually revealed a puzzled expression, and he asked in confusion, what did I say just now? You don't remember? Cicero shook his head and said thoughtfully, I'm just a consciousness created by my master to manage this courtyard. Maybe I really said something just now, but it could also be set by my master. It can only be triggered under certain conditions. It's not strange that I don't know. After all, my master's personality is quite bad. Z pondered for a while and repeated the two sentences that Cicero said. All things original brilliance? Cicero frowned. Did I really say that? What do these words mean? Sorry, I can't interpret it myself. Cicero shook his head. Maybe you can remember it and understand it in the future. Z thought for a while and said, where is Gaia? Miss Gaia is already by your side. Cicero said something that had no clear meaning at this moment. Z showed a confused expression. Cicero said, the entire courtyard here is Miss Gaia. You should know that Miss Gaia has a godlike ability. She was able to materialize her imagination through her thoughts. And this courtyard is the last thing that Miss Gaia materialized. After that, Miss Gaia disappeared from this courtyard. As Z frowned, you just said that this is one of the most important laboratories of Dr. Cicero, who created you. How did it become Gaia's materialized courtyard? It's very contradictory, right? Cicero smiled and said, but in fact it's true, because Miss Gaia turned the laboratory into the courtyard today. The ecosystem here is complete, and even without any energy supply, the courtyard can continue to exist until forever. Z was secretly shocked and said thoughtfully, Eternal power? Chapter 2191. In the courtyard, Cicero didn't respond to Z's words directly. Instead, he waved his hand forward. In the fairyland-like courtyard, a pavilion suddenly appeared from the ground. This was some kind of image, but it was a reality. Z subconsciously reached out to touch it, but his palm went straight through it. In the pavilion, there was a girl sitting in a wheelchair. The girl's hair was also silver gray, but it was dim and lusterless. It was more like it was dried up. This is... Z subconsciously approached the girl in the wheelchair and looked at her face. However, the girl's eyes were also lusterless. Gaia. Cicero came to Z's side and said slowly, to be precise, it's Gaia on the eve of the destruction. At this time, Gaia's physical condition was very bad, and she was unconscious most of the time. But even so, she would ask to do one thing in the only time she was awake every day. What? Waiting for a person, Cicero said softly, he's here. Z frowned when he heard that. He seemed to sense something beside him. He turned around and saw a young man running over quickly. The young man was even holding a book in his arms. He passed through Z's body and arrived in front of the girl in the wheelchair. The originally lifeless girl suddenly bloomed like an epiphyllum flower. The girl's face instantly had a touch of color. Even though this was just an image, the entire courtyard seemed to glow with a different kind of vitality because of the appearance of this smile. The most primitive feeling of being alive gradually filled the air. The young man intimately stroked the girl's head and whispered something in her ear. Then, he sat on the ground, opened the book in his hand, and began to read the contents of the book. For Miss Gaia, to be able to wait for his arrival every day and hear him talk about something by himself is already her most precious and luxurious request. Cicero's voice was like the sound of an old bell tower. On the eve of the destruction, she gave all her waking time to this young man. He is, Z said with a trembling voice, me? The pavilion in front of him suddenly dispersed like smoke, and then gathered again. On the grass in the courtyard, another scene appeared at this moment. It was still the young man who was holding a book, and the other person was a silver-haired man who looked like Cicero. No, perhaps this was the real Professor Cicero because he looked more mature. You want to stop developing eternal motive power? Why? If this continues, Gaia will die. The entire world is also facing destruction. The silver-haired man gently shook his head. Your Highness, as the successor of the Empire, I hope you can understand. Could it be that the burden of the entire world must be placed on her shoulders, and we can only be like vampires, sucking her life out of her in order to survive? It's not that the burden of the world has been placed on her shoulders. It's simply that fate has chosen her. She possesses such an ability. The silver-haired man whispered again, and the sad thing is, as humans, we have no way to separate her from this ability. Uncle Cicero, I beg you. It's useless. The man shook his head again. This is His Majesty's order. No one can disobey His Majesty's order. The young man angrily said, There is no such thing as eternal motive power. Everything is just a lie. Your research has no progress at all. I know that you and Father made up a lie to deceive the entire world. The silver-haired man sighed and said, It's precisely because this is a lie that we need to continue lying. When necessary, even if we know it's a lie, we can only force ourselves to believe it. Ridiculous! The young man roared, Cicero. As the successor of the Empire, I order you to immediately stop extracting Gaia's bone marrow, stop researching eternal motive power, and announce the truth to the public. Forgive me for not obeying, Your Highness. I am the Crown Prince of the Empire. I am the future Emperor. But you are not the Emperor now. There will be a day, wait until the day you can have that day. The silver-haired man looked at the weak young man in front of him and said solemnly, If I can wait until the day you become the Emperor, you must become the Emperor of the Empire. You must become the Emperor of the Empire. The sound seemed to be still lingering in his ears. However, the scene in front of Z changed again into the clouds and mist. It was still the young man, and the other one was Miss Gamma. The young man seemed to have matured a little, the maturity in his expression. At this time, they were standing on a high platform looking at something. Miss Gamma said, Your Highness, the time Gaia can wake up is getting less and less these days. She shouldn't be able to wake up today. Why don't you go back first? Where else can I go back? The young man smiled bitterly. Go back to that cold palace. Do you know what the servants in the palace said? As long as it's close to His Majesty, it's like accidentally falling into an extremely low cold, making people shudder. After all, His Majesty has too many things to worry about. I know everything. The young man shook his head. But I'm not the Emperor yet. Your Highness, suddenly, the young man reached out and grabbed Miss Gamma's palm, pulling Miss Gamma directly into his arms. The young man was like a ferocious beast, invading this mature body. Until Miss Gamma bit the young man's lips and pushed him away forcefully. She raised her palm and was about to slap the young man. However, she raised her palm halfway, but in the end she couldn't hit him. Fight. Otherwise, you may not even have a chance to fight in the future. The young man said faintly, in any case, in the eyes of my father, I am just a tool for mating. From tomorrow onwards, there will be a large number of women sent to me. You seem to be on the list, Sister Gamma. Gamma only clenched the torn collar, and the half-raised palm finally caressed the young man's face. Now, can you feel a little bit of the weight on Gaia's body? She shoulders the illusory future of humanity, and you carry the continuation of the fire of humanity. Aren't you the same? Gamma, don't just have Gaia in your eyes. Gamma lowered her head. There are also many people waiting for you in silence. With that, she turned around and left. If it's going to start tomorrow, I hope that the first one you can choose is me. At that time, I won't resist. The smoke changed again, starting from Miss Gamma, who was far away. Looking at Miss Gamma's gradually disappearing figure, Zeus' expression changed a little. He hesitated and asked, "This kind of emotion, in human books, seems to be described as, like, human books?" Cicero looked at Z in surprise and nodded. "It seems that waking up after a long wait has made you lose a lot of things. Of course, I don't have the right to criticize you. After all, compared to you, I'm the one with a purer rational structure." Z shook his head. Not only could he not agree, he could not understand. At this time, a Cicero said, "About Miss Gamma, in my memory, her feelings for His Highness may be stronger than like. Why? It's probably because she was instilled with the idea of becoming the Empire's heir and spouse since she was young. She has been working hard for this goal." Z was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "What else do you want to show me?" "Don't worry." Cicero smiled at this time, "There's a lot of time. I still have some follow-up to it tomorrow. It's restricted. Do you want to see it? It's guaranteed to be exciting." Z looked at Cicero in front of him expressionlessly. "Tomorrow, actually, nothing happened. How do you know?" Cicero couldn't help but show a surprised expression. Z said indifferently, "From my observation of Gamma, she has no experience in mating. Recently, she has been learning about it. This is enough to prove that it has never happened before. Also, mating is for the continuation of the human race, but the outside world still perished. In other words, it didn't change the fact that the human race was destroyed, or rather, before it could be carried out, the destruction had already arrived. Finally, is the real Dr. Cicero's personality also so bad? Probably when I was creating, there was some artistic processing." Cicero smiled slightly. "That's right, tomorrow indeed didn't come. The destruction came earlier than anyone had expected, and everyone was caught off guard. The destruction of the entire world happened in a single night. A fatal substance began to appear in the air. People would die within a short minute after inhaling it. Even if they wore a breathing machine, the various catastrophes that followed forced the human race to the point where they could no longer survive. Then me." Cicero waved his hand again, and the dispersed fog condensed again. Z saw Dr. Cicero again. Compared to before, the youth looked much more haggard. "Your Highness, have you really decided? You have to know that unless you can awaken Gaia again in the distant future, all of this will become irreversible." The silver-haired man sighed and said, "You may have to bear the loneliness and despair of the entire world. Loneliness may devour you. Let's begin." The youth said directly, "At least, in the distant future, I still have hope to see her again." He looked at the youth as if he could see the youth's true thoughts. The youth didn't seem to disappoint him. He said softly, "Uncle Cicero, you said that even if the world was destroyed and turned into nothingness, Gaia would still exist. Her consciousness would still exist. But if the world is gone, I won't be there, right? This was the only method I could think of that would allow me to accompany her in the worst-case scenario. Even if what awaited me was an unknown amount of time of deep sleep, an unknown amount of loneliness. Also, aren't you also planning this? The survivor plan. I can agree, probably because you and Father want to see it. The glory of the Empire is with you. The silver-haired man suddenly knelt in front of the youth and said loudly, "The glory of civilization is also with you, my highness. This is the reason why you exist." When the fog dispersed, Cicero said slowly, "Of course, after you were transformed, His Majesty ordered again to create many biochemical transformations of the Z series with you as the prototype. However, the transformations didn't survive the erosion of the world, and only you can exist in the end. I think this is probably partly because of Gaia's will." "What's wrong with you?" Z asked coldly. "Me?" Cicero was startled, and then he looked at himself. His body was slightly distorted. The projected body started to become unstable. Suddenly, Cicero raised his head. At this moment, a hole suddenly appeared in the sky of the courtyard, and then a big shadow fell from above. Boom! The sound of the falling object was unusually loud. It was obvious that the object that fell was heavy. Z's eyes narrowed, and then he ran directly to the place where the object fell. His dynamic vision was enough for him to capture the entire appearance of the object. It was Katz. On the ground there was a deep pit that was several meters deep. Only Katz, who was covered in iron armor, could get up easily without any damage after falling and creating such a big pit. When Z arrived at the scene, Katz, the armored man, was cleaning the mud on his body. "Katz?" Z walked to Katz's side in surprise. "How did you find this place?" "That day, I went back to the square of the station and didn't see you, so I waited here," Katz said quickly, "but I waited for a long time and I didn't see you, so I could only look around. Then, I saw the mark that Chintian left on the road and I found this place. I don't know why this place is like a maze and I fell down while walking." Z showed a smile and reached out his hand to pat away the mud that Katz couldn't reach. He said softly, "It's so good to see you again." "Yeah," Katz exclaimed, "I thought I would never see you again." "Be careful!" A shout suddenly sounded. It was Cicero's voice, and his projection instantly appeared on the side. Z was stunned, and he lowered his head. His body, his abdominal cavity, had been pierced through by Katz's hand. "Katz? So, why did you let me see you?" The armored man's voice suddenly became sharp. It seemed to be a woman's voice. Chapter 2192. His body was pierced through, and he raised. Z, even with such a fatal injury, Z didn't show any pain on his face. Strictly speaking, Z wasn't a pure human being. There was no blood coming out from the hand that pierced through his body, only some sparks. "You're not Kaz. Who are you?" "You don't need to know." The woman's voice sounded again. "You know I'm here to kill you. That's enough." After that, Iron Man Kaz reached out his other hand to grab Z's head. However, Z blocked the hand that was about to crush Z's head with one hand. Yes, he blocked the hand and was in a stalemate with it. He even started to pull out the hand that pierced into his body. Seeing the powerful arm being pulled out bit by bit, the woman's voice was filled with disbelief. "Impossible, you don't have much strength left." Z didn't answer but fixed his eyes on Kaz. He knew that the person who wanted to kill him was hiding in Kaz's body. Instantly, Z bent his body and stepped on Kaz's chest. Then, he twisted Kaz's chest armor and stared with all his strength. Kaz's arm was forcibly torn off, revealing a fair arm. "Isn't this your partner? How dare you?" "Don't worry, I'll put it back," Z said calmly. "Anyway, I often clean Kaz's body. It's not the first time I've taken his body apart." "You're too careless." The woman was shocked but didn't panic. Instead, she kicked the ground with all her strength, kicking up a large amount of sand and dust. Then, she turned around and retreated. The sand and dust could block her vision and create the best opportunity to escape. But to her surprise, Z threw Armored Man Kaz's arm out. The heavy armored arm smashed into Kaz's back, causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. When he quickly got up, a black shadow leaped towards him. Z. Get out of my partner's body, Z said in a low voice and punched Kaz's body. This punch directly tore Kaz's body into pieces. A figure rolled out. It was a woman in an ice-blue robe with a bulging belly. Z punched out again, but just as it was about to hit the woman, it stopped abruptly. Are you pregnant? Z's eyes flashed with surprise. According to a Cicero, the only one who still retained the seed in this world was himself as the Z series. At the same time, according to Gamma, the current world could only continue the fire of human beings through natural conception. However, he couldn't remember when he had interacted with this woman. Facing Z's fist, a trace of fear flashed across the woman's eyes. She suddenly shouted, "The child is yours." Z was distracted. At this moment, the woman flipped her palm, and what appeared to be half a golden book appeared. Be careful of traps, Cicero suddenly reminded her. Z frowned. After the woman magically took out half of the golden book, there was nothing strange in the surroundings. The woman in the icy blue robe gritted her teeth, and a trace of anxiety flashed in her eyes. No, I haven't mated with you. This child isn't mine. Z shook his head and quickly stepped forward, grabbing the woman's arm. She struggled a few times, but her arm was clamped by an iron clamp. The woman just stared at the half-golden book in her hand. If Book of Gaia wasn't torn, the woman was filled with hatred. The half of a Book of Gaia in her hand didn't have complete functions. Even the ability to travel between different subworlds had become ineffective. For example, now, in her perception, the ability to travel had been activated, but she still remained here. Z, can you give this woman to me? At this moment, two figures walked into the courtyard. Metatro and senior sister, Yulia, who seemed to be in a slightly awkward and embarrassed state. Medellin. The moment Madanzo and senior, Yulia, appeared, the woman in the icy blue robe gnashed her teeth. We meet again. Madanzo chuckled and said with a smile, I like good people who deliver packages from thousands of miles away. The woman in the icy blue robe turned her gaze and said coldly, Z, right? This guy, if you can kill him, I can let you see the person you want to see immediately. Her arm was still in this grip, but she could feel that Z's fingers were slightly loosened. Z looked calm, but the changes in his fingers reflected the changes in his heart. Madanzo frowned and suddenly sneered. I can do it too? Z, do you want to help me kill this woman? We met first. I did it first. At this moment Z looked directly at Cicero, who was standing not far away, as though he wanted to watch the show, and said calmly, Speak. In fact, within the range I know, there is no feasible way to awaken Miss Gaia. Cicero smiled and said, As for these two guys, it's hard to say if they really have a way. Maybe you can try to kill one of them. Anyway, there are many women among the survivors. The death of one or two won't affect the continuation of the fire seed. Z heaved a sigh of relief. The next moment Z moved quickly. Madanzo felt that something was wrong and retreated instantly. However, she didn't manage to escape from Z's grasp. Madanzo was short and small, so she was lifted up like a little chick. Whoever can awaken Gaia, I'll give the other one to him, Z said expressionlessly. The woman in the ice-blue robe and Madanzo, who were caught at the same time, were both stunned. They looked at each other subconsciously. The woman in the ice-blue robe clenched her teeth and activated the half of the Book of Gaia again. The golden book instantly emitted a dazzling light, but other than that there was no other change. The world acceleration also failed? In an instant, the woman in the ice-blue robe looked at Madanzo with even more anger. Madanzo narrowed her eyes and suddenly said, Sorry, I can't do it. Why don't you let me fight with her? It won't dirty your hands. It was at this moment that a strong vibration began to spread throughout the entire courtyard. Fine stones began to fall from the sky above the courtyard. A crack directly tore the sky of the courtyard. Then, a big hole appeared in the sky. In the big hole, a long worm that was dozens of times larger than a python and looked like a lamprey stretched into the courtyard. It instantly crashed into the ground of the courtyard. Bang! Cough, cough. Cough, cough. Senior Yulia quickly patted away the dirt covering her face. Her head and face were covered with dirt as if she had climbed out of a chimney. What the hell is this? Not far away, Madanzo also just got up from the ground. In the courtyard, the huge worm was entrenched and abnormally ferocious. Metatro's eyes narrowed as he subconsciously said, I thought that the mutated demonic wolves that chased us didn't approach because they were afraid of the Christmas tree. It seems that what they're really afraid of is this big guy. Senior, you mean? It seems that this big worm is the king of monsters in this city. Madanzo took a deep breath. Do you see the things on its body? Senior Yulia nodded with a dignified look. The monster Christmas tree they found in the square of the station contained a large red cocoon. However, there were no less than 20 cocoons on the body of this huge long worm that could be seen with the naked eye. They were inlaid on the worm's body like rubies. As senior, why don't we run to another page and hide for now? Kerrigan is here, Lucien said. Madanzo said helplessly, if we run away and the page appears, she will take it for free. Will you beat your chest? Kerrigan. Where is she? Senior Yulia frowned. Not only the woman in the ice-blue robe, but Z wasn't near them either. They were scattered by the huge worm's attack. After a crack appeared in the sky above the courtyard, the crack continued to expand. At this moment, the experimental field above the courtyard began to collapse. Huge rocks fell on the ground of the courtyard from time to time, leaving terrifying deep pits everywhere. In front of a courtyard statue that had been smashed into pieces, a Z silently watched the huge worm wreaking havoc in the courtyard while a Cicero's projection stood beside him. You're the manager of the courtyard. Can't you do something? Cicero could only smile bitterly. Maybe in the past, but now, since Miss Gaia turned this place into a courtyard, I'm like a wandering ghost in the courtyard. That's all. If I could have done something, you wouldn't have been stabbed in the beginning. Z lowered his head and looked at the wound on his abdomen. The equipment inside was already exposed, but he shook his head. It's fine. You don't have to blame yourself. Saying that, Z walked directly towards the huge worm. What are you doing? Cicero quickly asked. Z said calmly, the thing on this big guy. I can't allow it. Saying that, Z instantly jumped up. His body shot out like a cannonball and crashed into the huge worm's body. The impact was so great that the huge worm's body instantly bent. A terrifying hissing sound instantly reverberated in the courtyard. The hissing sound turned into a sound wave and caused a shock wave. In the front wind, Z landed on a red cocoon on the long worm's body. Without a word, Z blasted the cocoon open with a punch. At this moment, he didn't care about the consumption of energy. During these days in the laboratory, Gamma had already replenished his energy. Thus, he was able to win against the sneak attack of the woman in the ice-blue robe. A large cocoon shattered. The girl sealed in the cocoon instantly turned into ashes. Z was slightly absent-minded, but he quickly jumped onto another large cocoon. As the source of energy in its body was being destroyed, the gigantic worm was instantly enraged. Its round mouth, which was lined with rows of densely packed teeth, began to move. A sulfuric smell immediately erupted, followed by a gigantic pillar of fire. The flames ignited the dilapidated courtyard. Z suddenly inserted his hands into the worm's body. Then, he moved his arms and forcefully tore open a hole in the worm's body. He directly drilled into the worm's body. After a moment, the huge worm's body suddenly stiffened. Then, it twisted crazily. Miserable cries were accompanied by even more terrifying sound waves, causing the fragile sky of the courtyard to be instantly filled with dense cracks. Suddenly, the huge worm's body stopped twisting and then directly fell onto the ground. In the blazing fire, the worm's body once again split open with a human-sized wound. He bathed in blood and walked out of the strange worm's body, and dragged out a large red cocoon. Z placed his palm on the red cocoon and said softly, "I'll immediately release you." A shout came from the blazing forest. Z turned around and saw a figure staggered over from the blazing fire. It was Remia, who was supposed to leave. The girl's shoulder was injured and a lot of blood flowed out. She covered the wound on her shoulder and staggered over. "You should have left." Z was silent for a moment. The girl shook her head. "I already walked to the platform, but I met Mr. Katz. Then, Mr. Katz suddenly grabbed me." "He's not Katz." Z shook his head. Remia laughed bitterly and said self-deprecatingly, "It doesn't matter whether he is or not. Don't you think it's ironic? You abandoned Senior Yulia and escaped alone, but in the end, you still couldn't escape." Z said calmly, "It's fine now. After everything calms down, I'll send you out." His gaze was always on the large cocoon that was dug out from the worm's body. Remia walked softly to Z's side and said softly, "Have you found the person you're looking for?" "Not yet." "I haven't either," Remia said faintly. I might never find my brother. I might never be able to leave this place." Z didn't seem surprised. He just grunted softly. "Do you know? I'm actually a terrible person." The girl's voice was lower, more bitter. "I've always been terrible since I was young. I'm not as good as others think." Z looked at her calmly. The girl's face was filled with tears, but her lips had an innocent smile. She had such a smile on her face as she gently stroked her cheeks. "Do you know what I was thinking when I hugged her cold corpse? I was thinking, this troublesome person is finally dead. I don't have to say anything to comfort her anymore. Why didn't I die earlier? I can't even take care of myself." "But until the end, you didn't say what you were thinking in front of your companions, right? You know. Perhaps you know. After all, you've been observing me for so long." Remia said softly, "Only then can I be perfect." "Was it the same at the station square?" "At the station square, it was just to make you accept me. It seemed reckless and brave, but it was a choice made after weighing the pros and cons. With that, a dagger pierced towards Z's heart. "I can't go back. I can't go back." Remia cried even harder. "The people outside, everyone in the City of Freedom, know what kind of person I am. They can see me. They can see what I've done. I can't be a holy maiden anymore. I can only stay here. In this place where no one knows what kind of person I am. If I kill you, I can stay here forever. I'm really terrible. Since I was young, I've been like this." Chapter 2193. In the garden of the village school, a few older children had cornered a thin boy in a corner, cursing and beating him. The reason was that the boy had blasphemed the saint and even caused the holy temple to catch fire. This was the saint's punishment for the village. Since that day, many adults prayed hard, but the effect was not as good as before. The adults said that it was Dasher's doing. "This child was born to torture everyone. It's all your fault. I have to pray twice every night." "That's right. You still have the face to come to the village school." The little boy was too thin and weak. In the face of his peers who were much stronger than him, he could only curl up on the ground and barely protect the vital parts of his body. During this period, similar things had happened many times. The little boy seemed to be familiar with it, but it was really painful. You're bullying Dasher again." An angry voice was heard. "Oh no. It's Remia, run." The older children immediately scattered. Then, a girl ran over quickly and hurriedly helped the little boy up from the ground. The little boy shook his head at this time. "I'm fine, you can go back." "Dasher, the high priest said that I'd better not see you for a while, or else it will affect your studies." The little boy whispered, "If the villagers know that you're with me, a sinner who blasphemed the saint, they'll blame you." Hey Remia! Don't cry, I'm fine. These guys don't hurt, I don't care at all. You see, it really doesn't hurt. Liar! The girl cried, it's all a lie. It's obviously blasphemy. Remia! The little boy's voice suddenly became heavy and interrupted the girl. Remember, it's me who climbed up the statue, not you. You're the candidate of the Holy Maiden. You'll become the Holy Maiden, the perfect Holy Maiden. Dasher, I should go. The little boy said quickly, the Holy Temple seems to be repaired soon. During the reopening ceremony, I'll go to see you. At that time, you'll be loved and respected by the villagers. Her lips trembled. There were some words that she could not say. How should she respond? How should she confess? How should she tell Dasher, who had suffered everything and would face more in the future, that she was the one who had pushed everything to him in the first place? He couldn't say it. He couldn't say it. He was completely speechless. He was such a terrible person who was full of lies. I will become a holy maiden. No matter how difficult the path ahead is, no matter what method I have to use, I will become a holy maiden. I will. I can't do it. The dagger stabbed into Azia's chest crazily, and the girl's chaotic and hurried roars were heard. Why are you acting like you don't care? Why did he have to pretend that he didn't when he clearly knew? Why are you looking at me so expectantly? Why force me to be a dishonest person? Why can't I be a holy maiden candidate? Why can't I lie? Why is it that even I don't know which one of my words is true, and which one is false? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? The dagger was stabbed and pulled out, and then stabbed again after it was pulled out, stabbing the chest that would not bleed. Stabbing into the eyes that had witnessed his sins and lies. I'm clearly such a person. Why did you save me? Why are you still pretending that you don't know anything and traveling with me? Why can't you hate me from the beginning? Why can't you leave me in the lurch? Why? Don't look at me. Don't look at me like that. Don't always have expectations of me. Don't look at me like that. I don't want to respond. I don't want to respond. Lying is too tiring. I'm really tired. I'm really tired. She stopped. Perhaps she was tired, but Aziz didn't show any signs of collapsing. Even though the clothes around his chest had been stabbed into pieces, it didn't really hurt him much. The dagger fell to the ground and the girl fell to the ground. I can't kill you, I can't kill you. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back, I don't want to. She curled up, biting her nails with her trembling teeth, and repeating the same words in her mouth. If you don't go back, it means that you can't find the person you want to find. Dasher. Aziz slowly squatted down. Don't you want to find him? I don't want to go back, I don't want to. I don't want to go back. She seemed to be trapped in a cage. She couldn't see, hear, feel, or even herself. But I'll still find him. Aziz stretched out his hand and gently tidied up the girl's messy hair. If you want to stay here, then stay here. Because even I can't tell if you hope to find Dasher or if you hope to never see him again. Maybe what you should really find is yourself. Z withdrew his hand and slowly stood up. His eyes focused and he looked to one side. At this moment, he saw the woman in the ice-blue robe. Compared to before, the woman's expression was much more relaxed. The other half of the golden book was floating in the woman's palm. What a waste! What a waste! The woman looked at the unconscious girl on the ground and said indifferently, You had such a good chance, but you wasted this time. Aziz frowned and thought for a while. She should be influenced by you like Kaz, by some means? The woman in the ice-blue robe chuckled. The influence is real, but the means? For this child, I don't even need to use any means. It's just a few words. If my words are the devil's temptation, then she is the fallen one who is willing to jump into hell. I didn't force her. You don't know, right? Before I came to find you, Remia had killed all your companions. The survivor's woman, Gamma, and your companions. Aziz sighed slowly. I rarely hate a person, especially since there are not many people in this world. I find that I really don't like you. Z appeared in front of the woman in the ice-blue robe in a flash, but the woman calmly raised the half of the golden book in her hand. This half of the Book of Gaia seemed to have recovered its spiritual side. This time, the moment it burst out its brilliance, something strange happened. With it, I can rewrite the fate of the characters in the book at will. The woman in the ice-blue robe sneered. Even if I can't decide the fate of the protagonist, I can still influence your behavior. For example, I can make you pause temporarily. Circles of light spread out, and as the light spread, Azia's body began to age at a speed visible to the naked eye. As a human, his skin quickly lost its moisture and became dull. At the same time, various parts in Azia's body suddenly emitted a harsh sound, that kind of tight, rusty friction sound. He even struggled to raise his arm. It's just a partial fast-forward of your time, fast-forward to the ending state. The woman in the ice-blue robe showed a satisfied smile. It seems that your best fate is to age your body, stop functioning, and finally become a pile of scrap iron. Z's lips were opening with difficulty, but it was more like it was difficult to pry open. He had lost the ability to move normally, and the energy in his body that had been charged by Gamma was almost gone at this moment. But the light pattern stopped at this moment. The woman in the ice-blue robe closed the book in her hand, then took out a short sword with a beautiful scabbard and slowly pulled it out. Of course, I won't let you speed up the ending and die. I don't want this world to start over again. So, I can only kill you personally. The page is mine. Holding the short sword high, the woman suddenly stabbed it in between Zia's eyebrows in excitement. An enormous black shadow also descended from the shattered sky above the courtyard at this time, or perhaps it swooped down, accompanied by an urgent cry. Your Highness! The huge black shadow fell. It was a huge toad the size of half a car. When the woman in the icy blue robe saw this, she subconsciously raised the Book of Gaia in her hand. The book's light burst out, but this time there were no light patterns. This meant that the Book of Gaia had become ineffective again. Damn it! At this time, it actually... Bang! The huge toad, Taramaru, fell directly to the ground, knocking the woman in the ice-blue robe out in an instant. He landed, bounced up again, and landed on the ground. After a few times, he finally hit a tree trunk, and even his neck was bent. The woman in the ice-blue robe's eyes widened with anger and disbelief. But she still didn't move. At the same time, a figure fell from Taramaru's back. Miss Gamma. After falling to the ground, Taramaru could no longer get up. He lost his movement. As for Gamma, she struggled to get up and staggered to the side of Az, who was like a rusty statue for 100 years. Gamma, Gamma. Ma. I will fix it, I will. Gamma held the face full of wrinkles in front of her in panic. You still have to find Gaia. You can't die. I won't allow you to die in front of me. You can't. We still have to do actual combat training. This is what you owe me, remember? This is what you owe me. This is what you owe me. At this time, Miss Gamma resolutely stood on her tiptoes and printed on this dry and cracked lips. For a long time, Miss Gamma's eyelids began to tremble and close little by little. She leaned into Azia's arms and didn't move again. In the dilapidated courtyard, the raging fire was gradually extinguished. In the barren forest, two figures hurried over. Metatro and senior sister, Yulia. Remia curled up on the ground like a puppet. Taramaru couldn't see any signs of breathing at all. As for the woman in the ice-blue robe not far away, her body was hanging upside down, her neck was twisted, and it was obvious that she was dead. Z stood motionless. His lips would occasionally move slightly, as if he wanted to say something. Gamma leaned against the foot of Z. She seemed to have just fallen asleep. It seems. We are late. Yulia was silent for a while. I didn't expect it to end like this. It was hard for her to imagine that things would end in this way. How could things end in this way? Z was clearly created in the appearance of the boss. At this time, Madanzo walked towards the woman in the ice-blue robe without saying a word. Half of the Book of Gaia was scattered on the ground next to the woman's arm. Madanzo shook his head. Maybe even you didn't think it would be like this, Morrigan. After that, he sighed softly. As if it was a habit of his body, Madanzo suddenly drew a cross in front of his chest and murmured, "May all hatred also dissipate in the dust. The mistakes that the kingdom of heaven once made will naturally be borne by it." After taking a slow breath, Madanzo bent down to pick up the half of the Book of Gaia on the ground. But at this moment, the half of the Book of Gaia suddenly seemed to be absorbed by something and quickly rushed into the sky. Madanzo frowned subconsciously and raised his head in shock. Above the shattered sky of the courtyard, there was actually a figure standing there. It was a woman wearing a black evening gown. Her face was seductive and languid, and her beauty was unparalleled. "Miss Yuyi?" Suddenly, Senior Yulia let out a cry of surprise. The moment she saw the woman in the black evening dress in the sky, she subconsciously walked forward. But Senior Yulia quickly stopped in her tracks, and her expression changed slightly. She exclaimed again, "You are the sage of the free city." The woman in the black evening dress in the sky had her eyes fixed on Madanzo. The woman's face began to smile, and she slowly said, "Long time no see, Sir Metatron. Lily, right?" Madanzo sneered at this time. "Indeed, it has been a long time. I remember the last time I saw you was when you tried to get your body from him. It seems that you were the one who planned all of this behind the scenes. What a venomous woman. Do I look good now, Sir Metatron?" The woman, the sage, smiled again. "I like it very much." Madanzo shook his head. "I am not very familiar with the one who looks like this, so I won't comment. It's good that you like it." "Is that so?" The sage's expression instantly became indifferent. "Sir Metatron, please return the other half of the Book of Gaia to me." As soon as he said that, the other half of the Book of Gaia instantly rushed out from Madanzo's arms. He didn't even have time to catch it, and the book had already flown into the hands of the sage. "Morrigan, what a useless guy. I have already given her the Book of Gaia to use." The sage shook his head and said indifferently, "Sure enough, these outer gods are just guys who like to exaggerate and are incompetent and furious. No wonder it was so easy for that woman to uproot the entire celestial system." Yulia's eyes narrowed. The main point. That woman, could it be? The senior looked at the sage at this moment, and there was a sincere look of pity in her eyes. She remembered that last time, she also saw a woman in black wearing a maid's vest appear. What happened to that woman in black? Oh, that's right, the skin on that woman's face was torn off and then smashed into smithereens. #########. PS. After being caught by the mother of the strongest creature in the universe to clean up for a day, I was too tired and accidentally transmigrated in my sleep. This chapter was not published before 12 o'clock, sorry. Chapter 2194. Hearing Lily's disdain for the Celtic gods that Kerrigan once belonged to, Madanzo did not seem to have any intention of refuting. He just looked at Lily's appearance again and suddenly asked curiously, "Lily, I'm not interested in the agreement between you and the Palace of Blazing Heaven. I'm just curious. You're still using her appearance to wander around. Aren't you afraid that she'll come to find you one day? She's very stingy, you know. If she wanted to find me, she would have found me long ago." The sage chuckled. "As for the future, who knows what will happen in the future? Seeing how confident you are, I'm relieved." Madanzo nodded and immediately said, "I can feel that this page world is shaking. I'm afraid that the pages here will appear soon, right? If it were me, I would also pick this time to Harvest League. But the problem is, I don't understand why you're doing so many tricks behind my back. If even you can't guess it, I don't intend to tell you, Lord Metatron. The sage Lily sneered and directly combined the 2 pages of the Book of Gaia into one. You'll stay in this world forever. After saying that, the sage Lily in the sky instantly looked at Z and then slowly extended her finger. Her finger pointed in the air and shot a black light directly at the decaying Z. With the restored Book of Gaia, she was no longer restricted by the page world's power and became unscrupulous. Madanzo's eyes narrowed, but it was too late to make a move. Moreover, if she really made a move, the consciousness that followed Celia into the Book of Gaia's inner world would disappear completely. Between gains and losses, it seemed that it was better to wait and see. But there were always accidents. Seeing that the sage Lily made a move, Senior Yulia rushed in front of Z and opened her hands. Yulia, you're crazy. Madanzo was shocked. What was wrong with this woman who was always afraid of death and had the temperament of a queen? But as if she didn't hear him, she gritted her teeth and closed her eyes, shouting angrily, "You can call me whatever you want, little fairy. If you don't come out now, your brother will be killed. Your favorite brother." The black light instantly pierced through Yulia's shoulder, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it went straight for Z's heart. In the blink of an eye, the shattered courtyard burst into brilliant light. The black light that was about to pierce through Z was annihilated instantly. The sage Lily frowned slightly. She saw that the fire in the broken courtyard had been extinguished, and the spring aura began to glow. Everything that was burned was recovering quickly. Even the broken dome of the courtyard was recovering at this time. The sage Lily felt a chill in her heart. She turned around abruptly. She saw that a little girl had appeared behind her. The girl closed her eyes slightly and was slowly opening them at this time. Brother, seeing this, the sage Lily's brows suddenly relaxed. She chuckled and took out the intact Book of Gaia. Then, she took out a black cross sword from the pages of the book. "If I can't kill him, then I'll try to kill you." Lily sneered and said, "If you can kill him, then the rest of the pages will be much more convenient." The black cross stabbed toward the little girl who had just recovered. Facing the sharp stab, the little girl suddenly waved her hand, and an air wall condensed like a whirlpool and sucked the tip of the sword. The sage Lily couldn't move an inch forward at this time. The power of the sage level. The sage Lily was shocked and subconsciously looked at the little girl's eyes. In just an instant, she let go of the black cross sword in her hand and retreated dozens of meters as if she was escaping. The little girl flew straight to Lilith, the saint. A trace of confusion and panic flashed in the sage Lily's eyes, but she quickly made a decision. She actually opened the Book of Gaia and directly left this page world. That vicious woman. Madanzo cursed, which was rare of him. But at this moment, the woman in the ice-blue robe and the unconscious Remia were sucked into the whirlpool that suddenly appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Senior? Yulia crawled up with injuries, and she was in so much pain that she looked like she was about to have a cramp. They should have been taken away by Lily. Madanzo shook her head. That fellow has so many arrangements, and Morgan should be very important to her plan, so she had to take him away. But I don't understand Remia. No, Yulia said anxiously. I'm talking about her. She came to find you. Her? Madanzo was startled and subconsciously looked up, only to see the little girl who had scared away Lily descending toward her. F***CK. No! Senior! Quick! Come to me! Yulia hurriedly shouted, she's not looking for you. She's looking for Z. You're blocking the way. Blocking the way. Madanzo had probably never heard such words in her life, so she couldn't react for a moment. But soon, she ran toward Yulia. The little girl flew over from a low altitude, landed on the ground, and slowly walked to the side of the decaying Z. There was nothing else in the girl's eyes. A smile suddenly appeared on her calm face. Although Z was decaying and couldn't move, the girl didn't care at all. She gently hugged Z's waist and pressed her cheek against Z's body. Quiet, satisfied, and eternal. Yulia and Madanzo didn't dare to make a sound. They saw that the girl and Z were turning into stardust bit by bit and dissipating with the wind. The courtyard was still full of the breath of spring, and the stardust scattered with the wind. In the end, there was only Miss Gamma left, sleeping quietly forever. Well, sister-in-law's victory. Yulia said coldly. What? Madanzo was stunned at this time. Yulia shrugged and said, Isn't Gaia Dr. Cicero's adopted daughter? Miss Gamma is also Dr. Cicero's daughter. That is, Gaia is sister-in-law. This is sister-in-law's victory, right? Madanzo shook her head, sat down, and muttered, Book of Gaia was taken away. It's still a question whether we can leave this page world. Senior. Book page. We still have a page. Yulia said in surprise at this time. In the sky above the courtyard, a glittering golden page was slowly descending. Madanzo and Yulia looked at each other. The senior quickly reached out and grabbed the page in her hand. She subconsciously said, Is it the girl just now? No. Madanzo thought for a while and said, Perhaps because this world has inadvertently reached its proper ending. A proper ending? Senior sister Yulia was subconsciously stunned. At this time, the courtyard full of the breath of spring suddenly welcomed a crazy vibration. In the space of the courtyard, countless huge cracks appeared and swallowed everything. In just a few thoughts they saw outside the courtyard. The real sky, the cold and desolate world covered by gray snow was also being swallowed and disappeared at this time. The ending here is actually to return to nothingness. How can it be like this? Bring Celion with you. At this time, Metatro quickly took the remaining page from senior sister's hand. This is also a special page. Why do I feel like it's a coincidence? That's not right. Since Book of Gaia has been in Lily's hands for a long time, she must have entered it before. I'm afraid that these page worlds that haven't finished the plot are all special pages, or they are extremely important pages. Senior, I'm ready. What's the next world like? At this time, senior sister, Yulia, had already carried sister Celion on her back. Speaking of which, sister Celion was the one who had truly laid down in this page world. Ever since she entered the laboratory, Miss Gamma had placed sister Celion in the treatment room. She wanted to wake her up, but she had never succeeded. It's a world where the power won't be suppressed very much. Madanzo quickly said, I used it as a springboard to escape from Gamma's biological laboratory and stayed there for a short time. It feels okay. Let's go first. Yulia nodded. As long as her ability could be used, the Black Soul's body could be atomized, and her safety would be greatly improved. Before disappearing, Yulia finally took a look at the courtyard that was about to be destroyed. Vaguely, she seemed to see a man with long silver hair standing at the last Pure Land. The man seemed to be smiling at her. However, when she took a closer look, the mysterious man with long silver hair had disappeared. This page world had truly come to an end. It became pitch black. In the kingdom of winter, a light beam fell. In the cold castle, in the queen's palace, several figures appeared. Lily, who had the status of a sage, the woman in the ice-blue robe, and Remia. At this time, the woman in the ice-blue robe still had her neck twisted and she had no breath. Sage Lily opened the Book of Gaia. The woman in the ice-blue robe, Kerrigan or Huang. Her twisted and broken body was recovering. Soon, Kerrigan had recovered and could breathe again. It's you. Kerrigan frowned after waking up. When she saw the intact Book of Gaia in Sage Lily's hands, she understood and couldn't help but ponder. If you didn't have a character in this world, you would really be dead. Sage Lily leaned lazily on the Ice Queen's throne. When I lent you the Book of Gaia, I didn't expect you to be so useless. You actually failed and even died once when you had the upper hand. I didn't expect Metatron to appear. Kerrigan was slightly angry. This is your responsibility. Don't you know how dangerous Metatron is? No matter how dangerous it is, he is already half crippled. Sage Lily shook her head. This is not an excuse for failure. Listen, if you weren't the queen of this world, I wouldn't have saved you. You even lost half of the Book of Gaia. Kerrigan was silent. She couldn't defeat Lily, who had the appearance of the woman she hated the most. Especially when the Book of Gaia was back in her hands. Time passed. Lily suddenly said, I can feel her presence here. If I'm not wrong, it should be the girl called Jahan. Kerrigan thought for a while and said, Didn't that archangel want to borrow the sage's father's longing for his daughter, and use the hatred and obsession she left behind before she ascended to heaven as nourishment to recreate her as a sage? Later, I don't know what happened, but this girl walked out of the painting. You don't have to tell me. I know. Sage Lily nodded indifferently. Then, she threw the Book of Gaia to Kerrigan again. She instinctively took the Book of Gaia, but looked at Lily in surprise. You? I can summon the book back at any time, Lily said indifferently, but without the book, you might not even be able to deal with an illusion of her. Don't worry. This time, there is an additional important page and a special page in the Book of Gaia. Its functions have been improved, and it should be enough for you to use. Kerrigan's gaze froze, and her expression was cold. Don't let hatred blind your eyes. Lily ran her fingers through her hair. Unless your brute force is so strong that you can overturn the entire kingdom of heaven in an instant, you should use your brain more when facing that woman, even if it's just an incomplete illusion of her. You don't plan to stay here. Kerrigan frowned. Sage Lily said indifferently, I'm conquering the last world. I'll always be there, so I don't have time to care about you. There's not much time left outside, so you should take care of yourself. You found the entrance to the inner world? Kerrigan's expression froze. However, the figure of the saint, Lilith, was gradually fading away from the throne at this time. Lily. Kerrigan snorted and slowly walked to the throne. Her gaze was cold. Everything in the kingdom of heaven. I won't let it go. Stand up. Class dismissed. Goodbye, teacher Qingtian. Goodbye, students. A satisfied smile appeared on Qingtian's face. Then, she opened the door and left. The students on the way would also greet her. Well, greet another teacher. The most beautiful woman in the school, the most popular woman among the male students. Hello, teacher Qingtian. Oh, hello. Qingtian greeted her a little cautiously, but it was difficult to look away from her face. He had no choice but to push up his glasses. What's wrong? You seem to have something on your mind? The woman smiled and said, Is it something in class? Yes, I guess so. Qingtian nodded. The woman said, I heard that a student in your class applied to drop out. Is that true? Yes. Qingtian nodded and then sighed. I recently met with the student's guardian. It's her brother, but I don't know what to say. Her brother doesn't seem to care much about this matter. The woman suddenly grabbed Qingtian's hand and said softly, If you don't mind, I can be your confidant, teacher Qingtian. Okay, Qingtian said in a daze, Teacher Lily, you're so beautiful. The woman immediately let out a pleasant laugh. Chapter 2195. Home Visit. Yes, regarding your younger sister's application to drop out of school, I hope that we can discuss it in detail. If possible, when? We can work with your schedule. If it's at night, it's fine. Let's do it tonight then. Boss Luo didn't intend to hide anything, and he spoke at a normal volume. But after he hung up the phone, there was a soft sound of the door closing. The Do Not Disturb sign in front of the girl's door was still shaking. I've been living here for a few days now, Boss Luo thought to himself. However, the expansion at the edge of the town was not much. It was probably only 1 or 2 meters. He came to the door of the girl's room and knocked. Is there anything you want to eat tonight? As usual, there was no response. Then I'll go out and buy something. Open the door, close the door. Open the door. The girl cautiously poked her head out. Then, she shifted her gaze and tiptoed out. At this time, the girl had wrapped herself in a headscarf, put on a pair of sunglasses, and a mask. She also carried an oversized toed backpack and an umbrella. She was going to wander, during the home visit. Wah! What's your name? Sorry. It's just my instinctive reaction. Yulia smiled embarrassedly and then stomped the ground hard. When she found that it was really the ground and not an illusion, she immediately felt relieved. The descent this time was not too bad as it directly landed on the ground, through the only remaining special page. His current location seemed to be somewhere near the coastline. At this time, they were on a cliff by the seaside. Below them, they could see a small town. Indeed, as Madanzo had said, the suppression of this page world wasn't that serious. Yulia even felt as if she had gotten rid of her shackles. At the very least, she was able to turn her black soul into mist, and her safety was guaranteed. It's still early. We should be able to reach the town below before nightfall. Madanzo looked around and quickly said, "Try not to stay in one place for too long. Lily is much harder to deal with than Kerrigan." Yulia finally had the time to gossip. "Senior, what's the background of this Lily C? It seems that you two are very familiar with each other." "I'm not familiar with it. I've never tried it before." Madanzo shrugged. "Never tried? What the hell do you mean by never tried?" Senior sister, Yulia, opened her mouth wide. This senior 11th beginning should be a veteran black soul spy hiding in heaven. When he was in the Wraith realm, the six-winged form he displayed was suspected to be a member of the Blazing Angels. However, senior sister, Yulia, had never heard of a blazing angel with the name Metatron among the forces of the giant heavenly kingdom when she was wandering in the dimensional void. Even if I tell you about Lily C now, there are many things you don't understand. Madanzo shook her head again. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but there are too many legends about her. Even I can't find the source of her legends. Yulia's heart skipped a beat. Too many legends? Madanzo said meaningfully. The path of unification isn't easy, but the more legends there are, the wider the spread. I don't know where she learned this evil path from, but she managed to become a saint by accident. However, I think what she wants the most is a real physical body. Yulia nodded as if she understood something. She took Sister Celine from Madanzo and carried her on her back. Madanzo walked in front and held the only special page on their side. She seemed to be reading it. The senior opened her mouth. She also wanted to see the content of the page. You want to see it? Madanzo suddenly turned around. Yulia shook her head immediately. She said that the more one knew, the faster one would die. This was the eternal truth of the void dimension. However, Madanzo threw the page to Yulia and said with a smile, "It's okay. Just say that I asked you to see it." It's indeed different to have a big boss looking after you. Senior sister Yulia directly took the page and lowered her head to take a look. Then, she was dumbfounded. This was because this time, the page didn't have those words that she couldn't understand, but she could understand the meaning behind them. Senpai, this. Yulia looked at Madanzo subconsciously. Madanzo shrugged and scratched her head. It's the same as the 2 pages you gave me before. There's nothing written on it. Perhaps, only by finding all the pages and putting them into the complete Book of Gaia will there be changes? It seems that Lily really found an incredible void artifact this time. I just don't know where she got it from. Yeah, the Book of Gaia is too strange. Yulia nodded with a sigh. However, she was hesitant. This Senpai 11 didn't seem to have seen the contents of the 2 pages. In other words, she was the only one who saw the contents of the 2 pages? But why didn't the 3rd page appear this time? The 3 people silently walked toward the small town under the cliff. By the way, what's your original name? Why did you appear as Yulia? Madanzo suddenly asked curiously. Although I can't appear in the Holy Light Kingdom, I still know about the things in the Holy Light Kingdom. Yulia is actually quite good. Yulia thought for a while and said, It's nothing. I just want to complete the customer's request. Maybe it's fate? Actually, I'm also called Yulia. There's such a thing. Madanzo blinked, nodded, and didn't ask more. Huh, what's that? Senpai pointed forward and immediately shivered. Pages! In the distance, they saw something floating towards them in the sea breeze. The two of them instantly lost their composure and were both stunned. Madanzo reached out and grabbed something in the air. He looked down with a slightly strange expression and shook his head. It's not a page, it's a flyer for the circus. What's this? Senpai took a look at it. The legendary circus, the Dream Magician, is meeting you tonight? On the street at sunset, the shadows of the two people gradually elongated. Qingtian was walking side by side with Senpai Lily, the most popular girl in the school. The envious eyes of the passers-by kept looking at them. Qingtian puffed out her chest and seemed to be a little excited. Senpai Qingtian, it seems to be here, right? Oh. Let me see, it's here. Qingtian looked at the address book in her hand. It should be the unit on the 7th floor of Block B. Let's go up. Please wait, Senpai Qingtian. The perfect woman in front of her suddenly said softly. I suddenly remembered that we didn't bring anything. It seems a little inappropriate for us to visit them. We're doing a home visit. What's inappropriate? Qingtian said subconsciously, but soon her eyes became a little strange, and she said blankly, Yes, it's indeed a little inappropriate. Senpai Qingtian, why don't you go to the nearby store to buy some gifts? Lilith chuckled. Then, she whispered into Fairski's ear, I'll wait here for you to come back. Is that okay? Her breath smelled like orchids. Okay, I'll go right away. She looked at the Qingtian doll with satisfaction, gradually disappearing at the corner of the street at dusk. After all, she let the troublemaker leave, didn't she? Then, next, the woman raised her head, looked at the commercial building in front of her, and walked straight in with a smile. The guard didn't stop her because she was so beautiful that it made people lose their souls, as if they were willing to do anything for her. Soon, she had already arrived at the door of the unit on the destination floor, and pressed the doorbell, waiting quietly. The moment we meet, I'll just kill him. Or, would it be safer to use the normal method to try it out first? Because of the experience in Z World, the woman deeply understood how dangerous it was to directly kill the absolute male protagonist of the page world. Important supporting roles could be killed, but the absolute male and female protagonists were the bottom line of a page world. After all, it wasn't easy to find the entrance to this world. The woman slightly tidied up her collar and hair, then she held a briefcase with both hands, and her posture completely showed off her perfect body. The professional female teacher suit should be the dress that many men yearned for. Even the protagonist couldn't escape from the conventional aesthetic and interest. She chuckled lightly. But the waiting time seemed to be a bit long. After a minute, the door seemed to have no intention of opening. This made the woman couldn't help but frown. She was sure that the address was correct. Is no one home? She frowned slightly. Excuse me, who are you looking for? At this moment, a man's voice came from behind the woman. She suddenly turned around, only to see a young man in plain clothes standing behind her, with a big shopping bag in his hand. Z. No, it should be Luoya's brother. She instantly reacted and showed a smile. You should be Luoya's brother, right? Hello, my name is Lily, a foreign language teacher in Luoya's school. This time, I accompanied teacher Qingtian on a family visit. Really? The young man in front of her slightly tilted his head, as if he was sizing her up, and then smiled slightly. Teacher Lily, you're so beautiful. You're funny. Lily's eyes seemed to be more watery, and she covered her mouth and smiled shyly. It seemed that he was not that difficult to deal with. Perhaps she was too careful. After all, this page world was an unfinished world, and it was not a high-energy world. There was nothing to be too careful about. Please come in first. The young man directly walked past Lily at this time, took out the key and opened the door. This environment with his back facing her was too suitable. Lilith's eyes narrowed slightly. If she were to make a move like this, no, it was better to make a move now. In the briefcase, a delicate dagger slowly appeared, and the smile on the woman's face became wider. Suddenly, Lily, legend has it that you're Adam's first wife, right? Lily was stunned, and the hand holding the dagger suddenly stopped. Listening to the young man who was opening the door, she opened her mouth and subconsciously said, "What did you just say?" The young man turned back and smiled. "Nothing, I just found that the name of Teacher Lily is the same as the legendary Lily, so I'm curious. Please don't mind." Legend? Was there such a legend in this world? The woman's eyes flashed with doubt. She was a newcomer and didn't thoroughly study the historical background of this page world. But this page world was just the size of a small town. How could it be? Lily shook her head. "It's just the first time I heard it, so I'm a little surprised." "Please come in." The young man made a gesture of inviting her in. "You don't need to take off your shoes. This is the basic courtesy." Lily giggled. At the entrance, she lifted her heel, supported herself against the wall, and slowly took off her high-heeled shoes. At this time, the tight-fitting skirt was squeezed out more perfect lines. But the young man had already entered the room, and it seemed that he didn't care about the benefits given by the woman at this time. "Just sit anywhere you like," he said casually in the room. "I'll pack up the things I just bought. Teacher Lily, please wait a moment." "It's okay, you go ahead," the woman said softly, but she had already stood up, stepped on the heel of the other shoe, took it off, and walked into the room. In the semi-open kitchen, the young man was sorting out the supplies in the shopping bag. Lily looked around the room and asked casually, "By the way, Luoya, is she at home? She's not in the room?" The young man looked up and immediately thought for a while, if she's not in the room, she probably went out to wander. Wander what? Lily couldn't help but be surprised. She suddenly remembered the description of Qin Tian, who had already met this brother. She didn't know how to describe this brother of Luoya's. It seemed that he didn't care about his sister's matter. "She'll come back when she's hungry." The young man smiled, and then came out with a glass of water from the kitchen. "Don't worry. Besides, Teacher Lily, this time you're mainly here to look for me." Lily frowned slightly but nodded and said, "That's right. After all, you're the only guardian. It's necessary for you to deal with the matter of dropping out." He put the glass of water in front of Lily, smiled and said, "You've just run over a few worlds, so you should be thirsty. Please." She subconsciously reached out to take it, but the moment she heard those words, her fingers flicked, and the glass fell to the ground in an instant, overturning. "You!" The woman's eyes instantly became sharp. She couldn't move. She couldn't even speak. Only her eyes could see. The young man raised his hand at this time, and his finger gently brushed across her cheek. He asked her, "Do you like this face very much?" Her eyes turned sharply, but she couldn't say a word. The feeling of trembling began to spread from the depths of her soul. If it weren't for the fact that her body couldn't move, she would have been trembling, shivering, powerless. "What a coincidence, me too." The young man smiled at this time. "Tonight, stay for dinner, Teacher Lily." His finger moved away from Lily's face, and the woman suddenly regained all the senses in her body, but she had already collapsed to the ground. She looked up in horror. Even though she regained control of her body, she didn't even have the strength to get up at this time. The young man returned to the kitchen at this time. "I plan to make sweet and sour pork tonight. Can you eat sour food, Teacher Lily?" "I'm okay." Her voice trembled. Chapter 2196. It's the eternal male protagonist in the Book of Gaia. There's no mistake. After all, it's not the first time I've encountered the page world. However, Teacher Lilith sat on the sofa in bewilderment. Looking at the busy figure in the open kitchen, she suddenly had a feeling of absurdity, or perhaps unreality. She couldn't even get out of this unfinished page world. All the channels seemed to have been blocked in an instant. She gradually became weak and became like a mortal. She became like Teacher Lily in this unfinished page world. An ordinary foreign language teacher. You are the real. The woman's voice slowly sounded. Boss Luo, who was cutting vegetables in the kitchen, suddenly stopped. He raised his head and saw that Lilith's subordinate on the sofa stood up nervously instantly. Boss Luo said indifferently, "The real what?" Lilith's throat made a secret sound as she probed. In the Book of Gaia, everything about him is described by the person himself. "How do you want me to answer you?" Boss Luo asked expressionlessly. Lilith hardened her heart, gritted her teeth, and said, "Let me leave this place, and I swear I will never invade this page world again." That was her real thought at this time. This world of the core pages was too abnormal. She had never encountered a character in the pages that could directly counter the holder of the Book of Gaia, and it was this kind of overwhelming counter. "Teacher Lilith, don't you want the pages of this world anymore?" Boss Luo smiled at this time. "If you never step here, it means you will never be able to complete the collection of the Book of Gaia. Are you willing?" What do you mean?" She couldn't help but be startled. Doubts flashed in her eyes. She hadn't felt this way for a long time. She couldn't guess the other party's thoughts at all. She was completely afraid of the other party. She had to be careful as if there were restrictions everywhere. "I don't mean anything for now." Boss Luo shook his head, "because I haven't thought about it yet. When I figure it out, I may tell you." Lily couldn't help but open her mouth slightly. Boss Luo came out with a plate. On the plate were freshly cut fruit. He placed the plate in front of Lily. "There's still some time before dinner. Let's talk about something." "What do you want to know?" Lily took a deep breath and calmed down. At this time, she understood that at least the other party wouldn't harm her immediately. She still had room to maneuver. Boss Luo thought at this time and said, "Where did you get the Book of Gaia?" Lily thought in her heart. Boss Luo said calmly, "I have the ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood, and it's usually not bad. I found the book in the treasure vault of the Free City." Lily hesitated and said, "That's the treasure vault where the sage collected the spoils of war. It was hidden in an inconspicuous corner." "Which battle's spoils of war?" "I don't know." Lily shook her head. "About the Book of Gaia, how much do you know?" Boss Luo asked again. "One page, one world, a semi-real world comparable to a subworld." Lilith said in a deep voice, "Every page world can even give birth to crystals that are similar to the origin units of subworlds. I'm afraid that even in the dimensional void, it would be a super treasure that the void giants would fight over." "The pages in the book, when you found it, were they already scattered?" "Yes." Lily nodded. "I spent a long time to collect a lot of pages and gradually restore the function of the Book of Gaia. Currently, I still lack some key pages." "Do you know who I am?" Boss Luo asked again at this time. In response to this question, Lily had to think carefully. In fact, she already had some guesses in her heart. "You are the real owner of the Book of Gaia?" Boss Luo shook his head, but suddenly said, "I'm not the owner of this book, but I can use this book. I can use it now." "Who can create an immeasurable void artifact like the Book of Gaia? That's at least the level that he can reach." "Wait, what did he just say? It can be used now?" Lily reacted in an instant. She frowned. In other words, the reason for his overwhelming suppression on her was that the authority of the Book of Gaia was higher than hers. "That's all?" "If that's all, do you know why the City of Freedom needs a sage like you?" Boss Luo's voice instantly interrupted Lily's inner thoughts. She looked at him in shock. How could she not know about the City of Freedom? "Because I'm the reason." Boss Luo smiled slightly at this time. "Hua!" She pressed both hands on the table and propped herself up. Her eyes were filled with shock and panic and disbelief. She screamed, You are the real owner of the kingdom of heaven? Not exactly, but it's generally correct. Boss Luo said casually, At least for the current kingdom of heaven, it does need to pay me some fees every once in a while to continue using the kingdom of heaven. Lily's face turned pale instantly. She sat on the sofa weakly and muttered to herself, What kind of terrible abyss did I fall into? If he didn't lie, then he was an existence that even he had to bow to. For the existence of the kingdom of heaven, he didn't hesitate to hand over that woman's soul. Lily's mind went blank. This was seriously different from what she had planned. This time, it was out of her expectation. Suddenly, Lily thought of something more terrible. Even her voice trembled. My face. Because of this, I should have erased you from the source of everything the moment I saw you. Boss Luo said calmly, But because you have such a face, I didn't do it, do you understand? Understood. Her body shivered. I won't use it again. The shivering of the soul directly appeared on the surface of her body. It made all the pores on her body feel as if they encountered static electricity, and her scalp was numb. No, you can do it for now. Boss Luo shook his head and said casually, Because if you didn't use it, you would have disappeared now. Lily's heart was in a mess. Boss Luo sighed again, But if you continue to use it, my dissatisfaction with you will continue to accumulate. Then, maybe I'll destroy you in a way that you don't want to face at all. By the way, Miss Lily, have you ever tortured someone you hate? The kind that makes them feel more painful than death? Just these few words were enough to torture her. She only hoped that this would be an inadvertent nightmare. She would wake up soon. You. Lily sighed slowly. Her heart was beating rapidly due to nervousness and panic. She said slowly, What do you want me to do? I said, I haven't thought about it. Are you kidding me? The woman was almost driven crazy. She roared angrily, If you have the ability, you can erase me now. Boss Luo nodded directly, Yes. Lilith subconsciously looked at her own body and saw that starting from her legs, her body was slowly fading away. In that instant, she was pulled back from the edge of anger and fear. The disappearing had spread to the upper body. No. Don't make me disappear. I beg you. I'll do anything you want me to do. Don't make me disappear. Boss Luo said indifferently, I said, if I don't erase you now, it will only accumulate my dissatisfaction with you. In the near future, I don't even know how to treat you. Getting rid of it earlier may be good for you. I don't care. I don't want to disappear. I don't want to disappear. You can accumulate dissatisfaction with me, you can torture me in the future, but I don't want to disappear. She was almost crazy. She screamed like a knife scratching the glass. The disappearing had crawled over her chest. Lily's fear had exceeded a certain limit. However, Boss Luo seemed to be indifferent. But this woman who planned everything behind the scenes, had an unusual stubbornness that was different from ordinary people. At the moment when she was about to disappear completely, Lily smiled. She used the appearance of the woman in her dreams, showing a trace of a sad but beautiful smile. Her eyes revealed sadness and reluctance. Can you let me go, my master? After she finished speaking, she closed her eyes and silently waited for her eternal death, until she once again opened her eyes and discovered that the body that had already disappeared had now returned to normal. That terrifying man had returned to the kitchen. He didn't look at her and just said indifferently, I don't know if I should congratulate you, Miss Lily. Because it's the best ending for you to survive the promise. Thank. She almost used all her strength but couldn't say a complete sentence. At this moment, Boss Luo raised his head and looked at the big screen TV in the living room. Do you want to see one of your future? Lilith didn't even have the time to calm down after surviving a calamity when her neck stiffly moved slowly. A long tunnel appeared on the television screen. There was light in front. The camera was moving closer to that faint light, she saw a welded iron door. On the iron door, there was only a palm-sized window. She could see what was inside the iron door. As if she felt something, Lily shook her head slightly and turned her face to the side, as if by doing so, she could distance herself from something terrible. Finally, the camera zoomed in. Through the palm-sized window, she could see clearly what was inside. That was something that could barely be called a creature. It was curled up in the corner of the stone room. Its hair was almost peeled off. Its skin was gray and bony. At this moment, it was shivering in a delirious state. It slowly turned its face. Half of the worm's corpse was hanging on its lips. The eyes that were deeply sunken in its eye sockets were reflected in Lily's pupils. It was herself. Impossible, it's not me, it's impossible. Lily instantly fell to the ground. It's not me, it's not me. I don't want it. I don't want it. A figure rushed out of the building's entrance lobby in an instant. As if he had gone mad, he directly bumped into the pedestrians. He bumped into a fair-ski child who was carrying a fruit basket. Lily. Teacher? Qingtian, who was knocked to the ground, hurriedly got up. Teacher Lily? What happened to you? But the woman didn't stop. She just ran to the street in a panic. Qingtian didn't care about the family visit at this moment. She hurriedly chased after the frightened woman. At this moment, on the rooftop of the opposite building, a pair of watery eyes were looking at all of this with puzzlement, with binoculars. The binoculars weren't high-grade military equipment. They were price-quality goods bought from the internet. But they were enough for her. The girl put down the binoculars with a puzzled look. She lowered her head, crossed her arms, and pondered. She couldn't figure it out. But soon, the girl decided to give up thinking and quickly packed up the things in her hand. In front of her was a castle piled up by several cardboard boxes. The rooftop of the opposite building was the destination of the girl's wandering. Here was her secret base. What's more, the girl folded the cardboard boxes and dragged them under the water tank. Then, she stuffed some daily necessities and canned food into the big backpack called Tarangmer. The girl put on her headscarf, sunglasses and mask, sneakily went downstairs from the fire escape. Then, she sneaked all the way. When she passed by the house, the security guard didn't seem to mind. Xiaoya, are you back after wandering? Are you hungry? It's none of your business. The girl stepped up the stairs, opened the door with a key, and walked into the living room. She saw her brother cooking something in front of the stove. A sour and sweet smell came to her nose. You're back. Boss Luo smiled and said, Go wash your hands first. It's almost time to eat. The girl came to the opposite of Boss Luo. She put her hands on the counter and asked curiously with her eyes wide open, Brother, how did you do it? How did you scare that smug teacher Lily C? Don't you like teacher Lily C? Boss Luo asked suddenly. The girl muttered, Her face is nothing, but it's a pity that such a good face was matched with the wrong person. You haven't answered me. What did you do to that woman? I accidentally told her a ghost story. Boss Luo chuckled. He dipped a spoon into the sweet and sour juice from the pot and sent it to the girl's mouth. Have a taste. The girl's face was slightly red, and she was a little absent-minded. But soon, she gritted her teeth and said angrily, I don't want to be fed. Then, the girl ran back to her room. Leaning against the door, the girl stroked her heart. Her heart beat faster. Night had fallen. Deep in an alley of the town. Teacher Fairski hesitated as he gradually went deeper. In the end, he found Teacher Lilith, who had been running away like a mad woman, in the depths of the alley. Teacher Lily C? She was not as elegant as before. She was now curled up in a dark corner, shivering. That's not me, not me, not me, not me, not. Chapter 2197. The hot coffee was bought from a vending machine on the side of the road. Teacher Qingtian gave the canned coffee to Teacher Lily, wanting to make her feel better. Teacher Lilith, what happened just now? Why did you suddenly? Teacher Fairski frowned. You didn't wait for me before coming here? Did something bad happen? The woman held the warm coffee in her hand and slowly turned her head, looking at the head of the huge Qing Tian doll in front of her, and said coldly, Teacher, Qing Tian, do you often dream? Dream? Teacher, Qing Tian asked in surprise, What dream? I'll dream of one or more versions of myself. I'll dream of one or more versions of myself. I'll dream of one or more versions of my life. In fact, I might even dream of one or more versions of myself in a different world. She stared into the Teru Bose's eyes with a serious expression. I don't remember. Teacher Qingtian shook her head. We can only remember very few dreams. Maybe we have had them before, but after waking up, we forget them completely. She nodded thoughtfully. At least this meant that teacher Qingtian was different from Luoya's brother. It still belonged to the role of an unfinished page. Teacher Lilith, if you really encounter any danger, you must remember to tell me. Teacher Qingtian said seriously, we can call the police, we can't let criminals go free. I feel that Luoya's brother is strange. He is very dangerous. Thank you for your concern, Teacher Lily shook her head. I just accidentally stepped on a cockroach. I have some bad memories about cockroaches, that's why I lost my composure like that. It has nothing to do with the home visit. I haven't met Luoya's guardian yet. I see. Teacher Qingtian nodded. Bad memories about cockroaches? What kind of bad memory could scare someone to such an extent? I'm much better now. Teacher Qingtian took a deep breath and showed a slightly pale smile, but I'm afraid we can't continue with the home visit. Teacher Qingtian, I'll leave the rest to you. I'm a little tired and want to go home to rest. I'll send you back. Teacher Qingtian quickly said, the home visit can be done another day, I'm worried about you. It worked. Teacher Qingtian. Lily looked at Teacher Qingtian. Her charm that could make men fall head over heels for her was useful. Only when facing that person, it was useless. The scene of the future flashed in the woman's mind. She secretly decided that she would never let such a future happen. She would never let herself become a sewer creature. Never. They quickly checked into a hotel in a seaside town. After experiencing many page worlds, this seemed to be the most normal and peaceful start. This even made Yulia feel like she came to a seaside vacation. On the balcony facing the sea, Madanzo was looking at the flyer in her hand. The senior walked over with 2 orange sodas, took the flyer from Madanzo's hand, and asked curiously, Senior, are you also interested in this kind of magic? This doesn't seem to be an ordinary circus. Madanzo took the orange soda, thought for a while, and said, It's called the legendary circus. You should have inquired about it, right? You don't seem to be idle. Yulia shrugged her shoulders. The matter of gathering information was always going on. I heard from the boss of the hotel that this legendary fantasy circus would only perform once every time they go to a place and then leave. No one knows how this circus appeared and how it left. It's only rumored that every spectator who watches the circus will never forget it for the rest of their lives. Suddenly appear and suddenly disappear? Madanzo frowned slightly. Senior, what did you think? Madanzo thought for a while and said, Don't you think that this circus has been performing since the beginning? Mysterious appearance and mysterious disappearance is already a kind of magic in itself. So, Yulia thought for a while and said, This circus may be able to provide us with some clues? We should not be far from the central figure. Madanzo pondered and said, There should be mutual attraction between the pages. It will inevitably bring us to the necessary place. I'll go out and inquire about this fantasy circus again. The senior stood up and suddenly said, Senior, do you want to go together? I won't go. Madanzo shook her head. I have other things to do. Let's start the countdown now. When the sun disappears from the sea level, come back here and gather. The fantasy circus traveled around the world. As long as one held its flyer, they would automatically become an audience during the performance. However, the flyer didn't print the specific time and place of the performance. It only knew that the circus would usually mysteriously appear at night. The flyer suddenly appeared in the town. No one knew who brought it and who spread it, but there was no doubt that when it appeared, it became the center of the entire town's topic. Senior sister, Yulia, spent most of the afternoon asking around, but she didn't manage to gather any particularly useful information. Just as she was about to take a break, an extremely familiar figure directly entered her line of sight. Qing Tian. In the page world, there was only one Qing Tian doll walking in human form. He appeared in this town with a big bag in his hand. It seemed that he had just finished shopping crazily. In the evening, the circus members returned to the circus camp one after another. The rare vacation time was over, and the next step was to prepare for the public performance. The circus magician and leader, Mr. J, was unexpectedly strict about the public performance. It could be said that he had a meticulous attitude. "Daphne, what are you doing?" The Herculean armor Kaz, who was mainly responsible for the performance, appeared beside the girl with a curious expression. The girl was holding a black rod-shaped object with both hands and quickly shaking it up and down. There was obviously a spring design inside the rod-shaped object. The faster the shaking speed, the greater the reaction force. "I'm training my hand speed." The girl wiped the sweat on her temples at this time. Needless to say, this kind of shaking was very exhausting and torturous, especially the muscles on her arms, they were already sore. "Let me try." The Herculean Kaz dodged the rod-shaped object and stood up. But it was too strong, and the spring in the rod suddenly got stuck. The Herculean Kaz laughed awkwardly and said that he had to prepare for the public performance. The girl smiled slightly and didn't mean to blame him at all. The members of the fantasy circus were all very good. If possible, the girl even had the idea of following this circus around the world. "That's good." The girl looked at the busy figures in the camp. When night fell and the campfire was lit in the camp, everything became quieter. Here, she would only be Daphne, and no one would talk about her past. "Daphne, come and dance?" "Coming," the girl responded. She really fell in love with this kind of simple and lively but also a little busy life. "Go back, is there still a way to go back?" The sound of the accordion echoed in the camp. It was as if they were celebrating a festival. It was very lively. Outside the camp, a pair of eyes was quietly looking at everything in the camp. This pair of eyes seemed to be trying to find something in the camp. Qingtian, Kaz, Blue Little Bird, Big Toad, and Iron Follower, the four people are all here? Yulia felt that her luck was starting to change. This wave was too smooth. This world was peaceful, and the people were simple and warm. Compared to the previous page worlds, she felt like she had suddenly arrived in heaven. "Daphne, I seem to have seen her somewhere before?" Yulia suddenly muttered at this time. "Do you know Daphne?" Suddenly, someone asked her. Yulia subconsciously said, "She looks familiar, but I can't remember. Old. Behind her, a young man wearing a white suit, a top hat, and spectacles was looking at her with a smile. "You seem to know me?" The young man in the white suit looked at her curiously. "Jay. You are Jay, right?" The senior reacted quickly. "Mr. Magician from the circus. I didn't expect you to find out. This is difficult. Since the secret can't be kept, it seems that I have to kill her." The young man in the white suit, Jay, suddenly sighed at this time, and there was helplessness and sadness on his face. Senior sister, Yulia, on the other hand, was so scared that her soul seemed to have left her body. She was serious. If the boss wanted to kill her, she had no other choice but to stretch out her neck. At this time, Mr. J was looking at Senior Yulia with an expressionless face. It made Senior Yulia's hair stand on end, and her body trembled a little. Jay suddenly blinked. "It seems that you're not a timid person. You came to the forest alone to find the circus camp. Sorry, I'm just kidding, don't take it seriously. Boss, don't joke, you'll scare me to death. Yulia nodded with a hint of bitterness. The boss of the page world seems to be a little mischievous? Then, why are you here? A thought quickly flashed through Yulia's mind, and she immediately said with a sincere face, I want to join this fantasy circus. Join? Yes. Yulia said passionately, since I was a child, I've been hearing the legend of this circus. I think about it every day and dream about it every night. I feel that the meaning of my life is to become a member of this circus. When I was 10 years old, a charlatan told my fortune and said that I was suitable for this line of work. Then what talent do you have? Jay thought for a while and said, in order to ensure the quality of the performance, we are very strict with the recruitment of reunions. I'm hard-working. I can do any kind of heavy work. Yulia immediately said that she didn't mind starting from the bottom. I'm also very good at learning. Words are no guarantee. Jay shook his head. Come with me first. Jay walked into the camp and naturally became the focus of the members. He didn't even have to specifically say anything, and the lively camp had already quieted down. Everyone looked at the leader in a white suit and knew that he had something to say. There was even an unfamiliar girl beside Jay. In the crowd, when Daphne saw the girl beside Jay, her expression couldn't help but change slightly. Yulia Sr.? How come she's here? This 4th place of the previous Holy Maiden competition was very popular this year. There was probably no one in the capital of Freedom Academy who didn't know her. Jay, do you want to announce something? In the crowd, the beast tamer, Qingtian, directly asked. Jay chuckled at this moment. This young lady said that she hopes to join our circus. For this, she intends to show us her talent. Applause? Not only was there applause, but there were even whistles. After all, this was really a delicate and beautiful girl. Was the circus favored by the goddess of luck recently? First, it was Daphne, and now it was this new beauty. Oh. Finally, there's a beautiful scenery. It was a passionate gaze, red and dazzling. Yulia still couldn't react. But if she didn't show off her skills now, she really wouldn't be able to control this situation. The key was that she had almost no talent to show off. As the Witch of the Void and the great teacher of the dimension, she had fought against ghosts and gods and tricked all kinds of powerhouses, but she had no experience of performing in front of people. It was as if she was facing the criticism of society. Yulia made a gulping sound, made up her mind and started dancing. Da la, da. The surroundings were silent, and absent-minded gazes gathered on this delicate and beautiful girl. Looking at the beautiful girl's stiff limbs, Mr. Hercules suddenly shivered and accidentally crushed the beer bottle in his hand. After a while, Mr. J shook his head with a bitter smile. Miss, it seems that you still need more, training. Or, when our circus comes here next time, you will have become an outstanding performer. Wait. Yulia quickly said at this time, that doesn't count, I can perform magic. Everyone burst into laughter. Jay was the most powerful magician in magic. What kind of magic do you know? Jay was unexpectedly calm. Yulia made up her mind again. I can perform the magic of disappearing. They thought that this beautiful girl had some unique skills, but they didn't expect it to be this simple magic. Everyone couldn't help but be a little disappointed. Unexpectedly, Jay, the group leader, suddenly said at this time, what kind of prop do you need to perform this magic? A wooden box. Yulia smiled mysteriously at this time. The most ordinary wooden box without any mechanism will do. I will let you know what the real magic of disappearing is. Group leader? Promise her. Mr. J calmly ordered at this time. #######PS1. Red and dazed, the new white stone will also be more hardworking. PS2. Happy New Year. The error-free chapters of Trafford's Investors Club will continue to be updated in the bar. There are no advertisements in the website. Please bookmark and recommend the bar. If you like the Trafford's Investors Club, please bookmark. Trafford's Investors Club bar updates the fastest. Chapter 2198. Is there really no problem? One of the circus members was holding a long sword. Even though it was an unsharpened sword, it was still very sharp. The girl's muffled voice came from the box, saying that it was time to start. According to the request of the girl, not only did she have to perform the disappearing magic, but she also had to give the popular long sword piercing. However, the wooden box she was hiding in was the most ordinary box used to store props. The sword was not a prop that could be extended or retracted. If she really pierced the box with it, this joke seemed to have gone too far. Everyone couldn't help but look at the circus leader, Jay. However, Jay suddenly approached and said indifferently, "Let me do it." Before the circus members could react, Jay had already taken the long sword in his hand. "I'm going to do it. Come on, I'm ready to, Mr. Leader. You don't have to be polite. You can poke a few more times as long as you're happy." Since the box was an ordinary box, there was naturally no opening suitable for the long sword to pierce through. Therefore, it would take a lot of strength to pierce through the wooden board of the box. "Leader, you're serious too?" Herculean Kaz couldn't help but say, "I don't know where this girl came from. Will she die?" Leader Jay looked back at Herculean Kaz. At the same time, he directly pierced the long sword into the wooden box. The blade was completely submerged. At the same time, a shrill scream sounded from the wooden box. Oh no! Something really happened. Several circus members who were closest to the box were shocked. They quickly ran to the box and pried it open. Where is she? Not only was there no one in the box, there was not even a trace of blood. However, the long sword was still stuck in the wooden board. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. "Leader, where is she?" Everyone looked at Mr. J. Mr. J suddenly reached out and pointed at the campfire in the circus camp. Here, the beautiful girl who had disappeared was holding a skewer and eating it happily. "Hi, long time no see." Senior Yulia blinked. "Is this performance acceptable?" "Impossible, how did you do it?" Mr. Qingtian shook his head in disbelief. "I've checked the box and the sword. There's no problem." "You have a problem. Magic, magic." Yulia smiled faintly and said, "Isn't magic just making the impossible possible through programming?" Mr. Qingtian still shook his head. "I'm afraid even Jay hasn't seen this kind of magic before, let alone me." She wasn't borrowing props, and no one was covering for her. The audience around her were all veterans of the circus. If it was a small trick, how could she hide it from everyone's eyes? "No, I have." Unexpectedly, Mr. J suddenly said softly, "I have seen the incredible vanishing magic before." J. Mr. Qingtian looked at Leader J in shock. J shook his head and looked at Yulia and said indifferently, "You're qualified. If you want, you can become a member of this circus now. If you want to stay tonight, Qingtian will arrange it for you." After saying that, Jay returned to the camp alone under everyone's doubtful gazes. He looked like he had a lot on his mind. The group members all expressed that it was rare to see the leader of Jay show such a desolate expression. Okay, it's okay." Mr. Qingtian quickly walked out and said loudly, "Let's continue the bonfire party. Also, let's welcome our new member, Yulia. Let's welcome our new member, Miss Yulia." Daphne didn't find Jay among the tents in the campsite. She found Jay by a small stream outside the campsite. On both sides of the stream, there were summer fireflies that looked like stars in the sky. She didn't deliberately lighten her footsteps, nor did she use much strength. Jay easily sensed that someone was coming from behind. "Leader," Daphne called out softly. Jay put a pendant into his collar and said with a smile, "It's still early. Don't you want to play with them?" "Leader, do you have something on your mind?" Daphne sat down. I saw that you were a little unhappy just now. Yeah, I was unhappy. Jay nodded at this time and said seriously. He saw the appearance of a beautiful young female magician and felt that his position was about to be shaken. He was jealous and even wanted to kill her. Alas. Leader, can you be more serious when you tell ghost stories next time? Daphne couldn't help but sigh. At least don't smile, okay? Huh? Didn't I look like a murderous demon just now? Jay asked curiously. Does a pervert count? Daphne rolled her eyes. Jay immediately laughed happily. After a while, his laughter gradually calmed down. There's one thing that Chintian was right about. Daphne froze and asked subconsciously, Leader, you haven't seen that kind of magic before? Jay shook his head. There's something wrong with that girl. Daphne seemed to be more concerned about this girl, and her expression became more focused. What's wrong with her? Normal people can't do that, Jay said slowly. At least, she can't fool my eyes. Before I stabbed her with the sword, she had already left the box. That's impossible, Daphne exclaimed in a low voice. So many of us were watching. Let alone such a big person walking out, the box itself didn't move at all. That's why I said there's something wrong with this girl. Jay patted Daphne's shoulder gently and stood up. Also, I've seen this kind of magic before on that person. That person? Daphne had a flash of inspiration. Could it be? The person who taught me my first magic trick, my teacher. She died on her favorite stage. This sentence also rang in Daphne's ears. This was what Jay had said not long ago. So, because it evoked memories of the past, he planned to leave that girl. Yulia in the circus? Daphne wanted to say something, but she saw Jay stand up and stretch. I haven't been so excited in a long time. The disappear magic trick. Jay narrowed his eyes and smiled. This time, I must observe carefully. I will definitely crack the secret of this ultimate magic trick, hee. Daphne couldn't help but open her mouth. It felt like it wasn't entirely because of memories. After meeting Madanzo's people at dusk, Yulia had already forgotten about it and directly applied to stay in the Circus of Dreams for the night. Boss, no, Jay had already been found. Would the female lead be far away? Yulia, there aren't any extra tents in the group for the time being. You can sleep with Daphne tonight. Mr. Chintian, who was a beast tamer and also a part-time personnel manager, pulled Daphne in front of Jay and introduced her to Daphne. Daphne looked a little shy and lowered her head as if she was a social phobe. Yulia didn't pay too much attention to it. Although she felt that Daphne looked familiar, Jay was the main problem. It's impossible for her to be from the previous world and the crayon world. Maybe she's a character I accidentally saw in the demon realm? A character after the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th female supporting roles? You guys get along well. After Chintian said this, he turned around and left. Yulia took the initiative to greet her. Hello, I'm Yulia. I'm so tired. Let's talk tomorrow. Good night. Daphne hurriedly walked into the tent and quickly wrapped herself in a blanket before lying down on the edge of the tent. Young master, we're about to close. What do you think? In the restaurant of the hotel, at a table in the corner, a young man with a pipe in his mouth sat expressionlessly with his arms crossed. The food on the table was clearly cold. The waitress next to him stood there uneasily. This young master waited for someone for the entire night. It must be someone important, right? Maybe it's a girl he likes, but it's really about to close. Ha! You actually stood me up. Young master? The young man stood up and said calmly, Bill. Young master, the food you ordered? Pack it up and feed it to the dog. The dog will thank you very much. The waitress thought quietly in her heart, but she saw the young master suddenly turn back. Do you believe in magic in this world? The young man suddenly asked. Magic? The waitress was stunned and said subconsciously, Young master, are you talking about magic? It's okay. The young man smiled. I like to watch magic shows. Tomorrow night is the magic show of the fantasy circus. Are you interested in watching it with me? Of course. The waitress agreed without thinking, but she quickly said in disappointment, But I didn't receive a flyer. The audience without a flyer is not allowed to enter. What a coincidence, I have an extra flyer here. The young man blinked. Beautiful lady, can I invite you to be my female companion tomorrow night? Could it be that he didn't find a girl he liked, so he casually found a girl to make up the number? Those noble young masters seem to be keen on using this method to seduce good girls and throw them away after they get tired of playing with them. It's just that this young master seems to be too young. Even if he wants to play, he can't play with much, right? The fantasy circus was probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to watch it. The waitress gritted her teeth and resolutely took the flyer from the young man's hand. When the time is up, I will come and pick you up. The young man chuckled. By the way, how should I address you, beautiful lady? Caliana. The waitress whispered, My name is Caliana. Young master. Remember. The young man was startled. He looked at the waitress and felt that the young girl's smile seemed to have a special infectious power. It could make people's moods unknowingly become happy. But when he looked again, this infectious power seemed to disappear as if it was just a flash in the pan. Caliana? She woke up early in the morning. Yulia was awakened by the sound of the circus members training outside. When she woke up, she found that the girl named Daphne was no longer in the tent. Daphne fell asleep as soon as she lay down last night. Yulia didn't get any information at all and wasted an entire night. Yulia came to a member who was practicing throwing knives and asked, Excuse me, is there anything I can help with? It just so happens that I lack a target. Why don't you do it? Someone seems to be calling me over there. I'll be back soon. Wait for me. Remember to wait for me. Excuse me, is there anything I can help with? Apart from being a target. Yulia came to Mr. Chintian's side again. You came at the right time. Stick your head into this crocodile's mouth first. I'll see how long it can last. Someone seems to be calling me over there. I'll be back soon. Wait for me. Remember to wait for me. I'll be happy to. Excuse me? There's nothing I can help with here. You can go somewhere else. You're called Daphne, right? Yulia sat down next to a girl who was playing with a black stick. You fell asleep as soon as you came back last night. I didn't have time to talk to you. What's the matter? Daphne thought for a bit and asked. Girl almost didn't look at Yulia's eyes. Senior sister, Yulia asked curiously, does the captain of your team have any strange hobbies? Daphne looked up in shock and asked, What do you mean? Yulia shrugged and said, Ever since I woke up and left the tent in the morning, this captain has been peeping at me? Impossible. Daphne shook her head. However, Senior Yulia said, Of course, I also thought that it was impossible. At first, I just thought that it was a coincidence. But when I was brushing my teeth, he was watching me when I was washing my face, he was watching me when I was yawning. Even when I was squatting in the toilet, he was watching you. Daphne's eyes widened in disbelief. No, he was just squatting next to me. Yulia shrugged. Even though you're the boss, you can't harass your female employee like this, okay? If you have the ability, you can force yourself on me and make me your mistress. Don't make me live in fear every day, afraid that Miss Maid will chop me up 9 streets. If you want to know, you can ask the captain yourself. Daphne stood up and said, I don't have time to talk to you. Yulia watched as girl left. Instead of getting angry, Yulia rubbed her chin and exclaimed, as expected of the boss. No matter where he is, he's always so charming. TSK. Wait a minute. She suddenly thought of another problem. If she wants to take a shower later, should I pretend that I don't know, or should I pretend that I don't know and continue taking a shower? This is difficult. Chapter 2199. In fact, Yulia didn't find a chance to take a shower. The fantasy circus soon ushered in the public performance. Although the vanish magic trick was very amazing, it was only limited to the circus members. To the audience, this so-called vanishing magic trick was nothing new. The audience obviously wouldn't believe that the person performing on stage could complete it without any props. Even if the audience below the stage were to come up and check, they would only be treated as actors that had been discussed long ago. Furthermore, the performance had already been planned long ago, so there was no chance for Yulia to go on stage. There is one thing that you and Daphne can do, and you should be able to do it very well. When the performance was about to start, Mr. Qingtian mysteriously found Yulia and Daphne. Wear these, you will be the most beautiful girls tonight. This is a bunny girl? Daphne exclaimed instantly. Daphne, you are already a member of the circus, and you are also the leader's student, so you have to contribute to the circus. Mr. Qingtian was very emotional at this time, and he pressed on Daphne's shoulder. You know, you are the best. It's definitely not because of the unanimous vote of the guild members that I put on these clothes for you. I can't, I'm sorry. Daphne took a step back, lowered her head, and ran out quickly. This surprised Mr. Qingtian. He was so surprised that he subconsciously looked at the second new member, the beautiful Yulia. How about I can't do it too? The senior asked tentatively. Mr. Qingtian thought for a while and said, the knife-throwing performance still lacks a human target, how about it? I suddenly remembered that one of my dreams is to become an outstanding bunny girl. The senior picked up the clothes and left without saying anything else. Mr. Qingtian shook his head. The personalities of these two newcomers were really different. One was cheerful and sly, while the other had a lot on her mind. At this moment, someone walked into the tent. Is work going well? It's all arranged. Don't worry, leader. Mr. Qingtian nodded and said, now we're just waiting for you to perform. But according to the rules, you have to prepare everything yourself. Alright, what are we performing tonight? The legend of Jay was there. Every time he performed magic, it was different, and it was all new magic. He was not only a legendary magic master, but also a man who was known as all magic tricks. Dream Circus's fame mostly came from the mysterious magician, Jay. That's right. What should I perform tonight? Jay was deep in thought. Leader, don't tell me you haven't made up your mind yet? Mr. Qingtian's expression changed slightly. The regiment commander patted Mr. Qingtian's shoulder casually and comforted him. Of course not. Don't worry, I'm only starting to think about what to perform now. Look at the situation now. Even if you're not serious, there's a limit. Suddenly, the roar of the beast tamer, who was in charge of human resource management, could be heard from within the tent. After that, the group leader covered his ears as he ran out of the tent in fear of losing his life. They seemed to have already gotten used to this and continued to do what they were doing. She walked around the camp but didn't see Daphne, so she decided to go back to her own tent and try on the bunny girl outfit. She didn't feel embarrassed about it. After all, wearing a swimsuit to the beach would expose a lot of her body parts. The moment she opened the tent, a figure was imprinted in the eyes of Yulia. It was a white and tender back, but there was a huge scar on the originally flawless back. It seemed to be a burn mark. It was like a firebird spreading its wings. Yulia couldn't help but be a little absent-minded, though a girl in the tent quickly put on her clothes and held her collar tightly. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly turned around. You saw it all? I'm not blind. Yulia shrugged. Besides, I'm not a man. So what if I see it? How about I show it to you as well? Do you want to see the front or the back? As she spoke, she began to unbutton her clothes. I'm not interested. Daphne hurriedly said, don't unbutton it. Yulia suddenly said, so this is the reason? Daphne paused. Yulia tossed the bunny girl clothes in her hands to Daphne. The reason why you don't want to wear it. Daphne lowered her head and was silent for a moment. Then, she nodded, as if admitting to it. After all, it's such a scary thing. Yulia narrowed her eyes. What if I say that I have a way to help you? Yulia narrowed her eyes. Have you heard of the evil art of makeup? Ma makeup? Is it really going to work? With a doubtful voice, Daphne nervously covered the front half of her body with her clothes, leaving only her back exposed. She felt a chill on the skin of her back, as if something was being smeared on it. Girl, originally didn't want to accept it, but she didn't expect Miss Yulia to be so stubborn and overly enthusiastic. Makeup could indeed cover the scars on her back, but a girl knew that the scars on her back were too uneven and couldn't be easily covered. Moreover, there was no such thing as a lightweight concealer in this place. If it was in a place like the Free Cities, Yulia quickly said, "Don't worry, I'm just short of applying for a patent." She was using a small knife to cut off one of her fingers. Soon, a new finger grew out from the cut. At the same time, the finger that was cut off turned into a sticky grayish-black substance. She spat 2 more mouthfuls of saliva into the bowl, then added some mud and flour from the outside to increase the viscosity. She then began to apply it directly on Daphne's back with her hands. Daphne's back instantly turned black, as if she had applied a mask made of seaweed mud. But soon, the black fluid began to change color. Soon, it had completely turned into the color of skin. How did you get this wound? Yulia didn't immediately announce that she had succeeded. Instead, she asked curiously, "It seems like it's been many years." "I was careless when I was young and got burned by a fire," Daphne said in a low voice. "How big was the fire?" Yulia exclaimed. "Your childhood was really unfortunate." "Actually, it was okay." Daphne showed a relaxed smile. "It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Although there were some bad things, overall it was good." "What an optimistic child." Senior sister Yulia patted Daphne's shoulder and said, "Okay, it's done. Why don't you take a look at it?" The senior brought over a mirror, held it, and stood behind Daphne. Girl looked back and looked at the smooth and flawless back. She opened her mouth in disbelief. "How did you do it? It's like, you can't tell at all, right?" Yulia smiled smugly. "Witchcraft, witchcraft. Not to mention such a small matter, I can even turn you into a man without a problem. I want to." Daphne's voice suddenly rose a bit. Then, she lowered her voice. "Try on the clothes." "Oh, okay." Yulia froze. "And then?" "Why don't you ask Mr. Chintian for another set?" Daphne continued. Yulia shrugged and didn't say anything. She threw the things on the table and left the tent. However, the curtain of the tent still opened a little after she left, as if it was observing. The people in this circus all like to peep. Yulia couldn't help but sigh secretly. "Daphne, let's not talk about it. Mr. J, can you not hide in such an obvious place like the tree? I really need to change clothes later. Is it really okay for you to do this? I just want to go to work properly and earn my working hours, okay? Everyone, look at the sky. There's a woman flying without clothes." Senior sister, Yulia, immediately screamed at the top of her lungs and then ran away like a wisp of smoke. It was another evening. In front of the hotel, the girl named Kalyana was neatly dressed and waiting. The clothes were rented with a week's salary, and the necklace was her mother's most precious dowry. As for the handbag, it was cleaned by the resident and hadn't been returned yet. She planned to borrow it for one night. For tonight's appearance, Kalyana was almost desperate. It wasn't for vanity, she just wanted to be able to get married before the age of 18. That was all. Soon, in front of the hotel, a luxurious carriage slowly drove over. The driver was obviously a deacon of a noble family, not an ordinary coachman. "Miss Kalyana, please get in the carriage," the polite deacon said respectfully in front of the girl at this time. Kalyana was a little dizzy as she sat in the carriage with the help of the deacon. Then, she saw the young master who waited until the restaurant closed last night. She just remembered that she still didn't know the young master's name. Madanzo. Hello, young Master Madanzo. Kaliana was a little restrained. Although she had been mentally prepared for a long time, at this time, it was still different from what she had imagined. I don't look scary, right? Madanzo chuckled. At this time, Kaliana suddenly shivered and hurriedly leaned down, putting her head on the ground, and said in fear and trepidation, Sorry, young Master Madanzo. I didn't know that you are a real noble. I thought you were just a young master of a rich family. Sorry. Please don't kill me. Why would I want to kill you? Metatro blinked his eyes and asked with interest. Because I offended you as a noble. Kaliana's voice trembled. It is a big crime for a commoner to look at a noble directly, and I am sitting in the same carriage with you. God! How can I be so unlucky? Why did you think that I was just a young master of a rich family last night, but today you think that I am a noble? Why, young master, please don't joke. Kaliana's face was pale. Who doesn't know that only people who are pure-blood nobles can use the noble badge? I can still see such a big badge. Madanzo blinked. There was indeed a badge in the carriage, and it was quite eye-catching. It was just that he took this carriage when he was strolling outside the town, and so was the deacon who drove the carriage outside. But because he found it pleasing to the eye, he slightly borrowed it. As for the owner of the carriage, she shouldn't be eaten by a wild boar, right? Sit, Madanzo said calmly. But Kaliana still didn't dare to raise her head. Madanzo was used to it and said indifferently, I asked you to sit, so you sat. I forgive you. But if you don't listen, you are guilty. Kaliana's body trembled slightly, and she had to slowly get up, but she didn't dare to approach. She only dared to lean against the carriage door, lowering her head for fear of being restricted. Pure-blood nobles, do you like to kill people? Madanzo suddenly asked at this time. I don't know. I just heard about it, Kaliana replied cautiously. Madanzo chuckled and said, I thought that in such a remote town, people don't know much about nobles. I thought I could have a good time. Kaliana, how much do you know about pure-blood nobles? The girl looked up in surprise, but she quickly lowered her head in panic. I just want to know how much people in such a remote town know about nobles, so that it will be convenient for my next action. Madanzo waved her hand and said, You just need to tell me what you know. Yes. Kaliana gulped and said cautiously, It is said that pure-blood nobles are the descendants of the world's founders. They live in the sacred land in the center of the royal power. Pure-blood nobles are born above the people, and they enjoy absolute privileges. Civilians must not offend pure-blood nobles. Madanzo didn't say anything, but when she saw Kaliana stop, she said casually, And then, that's it, Kaliana said slowly, That's all I know, that's all. Madanzo suddenly had a feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Kaliana nodded and said, Is it not enough to know this? Madanzo was stunned, but then nodded thoughtfully. To some extent it is indeed enough for the people, and the simpler it is, the clearer it is. Absolute privilege. This is a great shackle. Young Master Madanzo? Then, Kaliana, there is one more thing, can you tell me? Madanzo's face suddenly darkened. She was shocked by his sudden change, and her breathing became rapid. What is it? Madanzo narrowed his eyes at this time. Tell me, why do you smell different from ordinary people? Kaliana, who was in a state of panic, suddenly froze at this time. In the next moment, she had kicked the door of the carriage open and was about to jump out and escape. Metatro immediately applied what he had learned. I'm a pure-blood noble. Just run. Kaliana's face instantly turned ashen, and she sat down paralyzed, muttering to herself, It's over, I shouldn't have gotten involved in this muddy water, I shouldn't have been greedy. It's over now. What should I do? Wadash. She really cried like a child who had made a mistake. Madanzo was not surprised by Kaliana's crying, but by the identity of a pure-blood nobles. This absolute privilege, was it really a bone-deep shackle? Chapter 2200. Young master, this is an elf. This was what the deacon who was driving the carriage said. Then, the strict deacon carefully identified some of Kariana's features that were not easy to find and gave a more accurate answer. To be precise, she is a hybrid between a human and an elf. She is even more lowly than an elf. Madanzo was expressionless. He secretly wanted to dig out the information in the deacon's mind. It was a good thing that the page world did not completely restrict supernatural abilities. It was much more convenient to do things. However, since it did not restrict supernatural abilities, it meant that there were supernatural abilities that could be used here. In fact, regardless of whether supernatural abilities were restricted or not, these page worlds were dangerous. For example, a ZS world restricted supernatural abilities, but the creatures there had evolved into monsters and beasts. There was no way to fight them. I see. Continue driving, Madanzo ordered indifferently. At this time, in the carriage, Kariana, whose identity had been exposed, was hiding in a corner with a pale face. She was not completely confused, probably because she felt that Madanzo was still too young and might not have the ability to violate her. Don't you want to talk about yourself, Miss Kariana? Madanzo suddenly chuckled. He easily got into this privileged status without any incongruity. What else can I say? Kariana smiled bitterly. Say that I am stupid and jump into a fire pit. Or say that I don't know what's good for me and dared to sit in a noble's carriage. There is no enmity between us. Do I look like someone who kills indiscriminately? Madanzo pointed at himself curiously. No matter how I look at it, I look like the Virgin Mary who will give food to the poor. Virgin Mary? Kariana was stunned. Who is the Virgin Mary? She's just a woman with big breasts. Madanzo shrugged casually. She's a little naughty sometimes. You really don't intend to torture me? Kaliana looked up doubtfully. Even for a half-elf like me who can't get an identity? What good is it for me to torture you? Madanzo laughed. Kaliana thought for a moment and said, to satisfy your special desires and so on. Anyway, it's nothing new for a noble young master to humiliate us. The most exaggerated story I've ever heard was a noble young master who wasn't even as old as you. He locked up a group of elves and orcs together and made them go crazy for 10 whole days just to make a bet with someone to prove who had better endurance. He's so good at it? Madanzo looked shocked. Where is this kind of scum? Wait for me to send him to the afterlife. You lied to me again. You nobles are forbidden from hurting each other. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child who doesn't know anything? Madanzo shrugged. Next question, where is your home and who is in your family? Is your father an elf or your mother's side? You want to know my background? Dream on. Kaliana snorted. If you want to kill me, then kill me. I won't be tortured by you even if I die. At worst, I'll kill myself. Kaliana began to curse wildly. She probably had the idea of smashing a broken jar. Madanzo couldn't take it anymore. He had to cover his ears and climb out of the carriage's window. He sat in front of the carriage and stood side by side with the noble deacon. The deacon's name was Babalia. Babalia, how long have you served me? Young master, I have served you for 20 years. The deacon responded respectfully. At the same time, his face became cautious. Usually, when the master asked this kind of question, it meant that something bad had happened. Tell me about me. Tell me about my identity. Young master. I told you to tell me. Babalia said solemnly, Young master, you are the descendant of the great founder, Emperor Califar's 59th generation. Even among the many pure-blood nobles, your bloodline is very close to the royal bloodline. Your identity is extremely noble. You are a hereditary Earl de Cray. De Cray. Madanzo thought for a moment. That was probably the name of the unlucky guy she threw into the forest to feed the mosquitoes. Tell me about the elves and orcs. Madanzo looked at the road ahead and ordered. Since the end of the mythological war, the great founder, Emperor Califar, conquered the territory of the mysterious creatures. A large number of refugees from the mysterious creatures fled to our human society. Gradually, Kaliana stopped shouting in the carriage. She was probably tired. Along the way, there was only Babalia's narration and Madanzo's occasional questions. Not long ago, they could see a bit of light ahead. The light of the Dream Circus's camp. Captain, if you continue like this, I'm going to scream. I'm really going to scream. Ms. Yulia, this is for the sake of the circus. And this kind of thing should be very easy for you, right? How is it easy? There are so many people. I can't handle it. Senior Yulia said pitifully, my wish is to become a great magician. I've already sold my body. You want me to sell my body? You're just using your hands. Captain J chuckled and said, there are many male spectators outside. It seems that they are very willing to pay extra for your hands. This is also considered as a source of income. That's too much. Senior Yulia was about to cry. Then I can only do it myself. The captain looked tragic and sighed. But Ms. Yulia, if you can't contribute to our circus, then I can only reluctantly ask you to leave. We can't keep people here for free. But you can't do this, right? Senior Yulia wanted to cry but had no tears. There are so many people. How long do I have to shake hands? And can you guarantee that these men won't do more rude things when shaking hands? Also, why do I have to do this kind of thing? Can't Daphne do it? After all, Ms. Yulia is more eye-catching than Daphne. The regiment commander said earnestly. Besides, if they still want more after the handshake, wouldn't we be able to generate more income? Senior Yulia widened her eyes as if she saw something unbelievable. The person in front of her is really a certain image of boss? It's decided then. Suddenly, the captain directly inserted a huge sign in front of Yulia. The sign read frowny face, one handshake costs 10 silver coins for 3 seconds. Buy 3 times and get 1 free. Buy more and get more free. Note. You can specify the specific location of the handshake. Captain. Senior sister Yulia was stunned. She immediately chased after him, but she only took 2 steps before she was pulled back by something. She turned around to look and discovered that her feet had been shackled at some point in time. The shackles were tied to a large nail that was buried in the ground. At this time, a group of men gradually gathered around with bright eyes. The public performance of the circus had not officially started yet, but there were already quite a number of people who came with flyers in their hands. The depths of the forest were brightly lit, as if it was daytime. Not far away, Mr. Chintian was moving tables and chairs over with his men. He was preparing to board the plane and collect money. Senior Yulia instantly looked at Mr. Fersky, who seemed to be used to seeing this, with a look of despair on her face. This is the captain's order. I can't do anything about it. Mr. Chintian comforted her. I'll have to trouble you, Miss Yulia. I think these people won't be able to buy more than a few times. After all, most of them have female companions. Senior Yulia didn't say anything and continued to look at them sadly. Mr. Chintian said, or you can use your magical vanish magic. Anyway, we can't see it, and the captain won't blame us. I'll do it. Senior sister Yulia suddenly snorted and said, but I'll decide what to do myself. Strange, where's my hand speed training stick? Daphne checked her belongings in confusion. Girl S seat was quite deserted at this time, and she felt like she was sitting on a bench. A girl who could only lean on the signboard and rest for a while. When she was free, she wanted to continue training her hand speed. On the other side, there was a long queue in front of a small black tent. They were all men, and they all went in with anticipation. Then, they came out with shaky footsteps. Suddenly, a carriage stopped in front of Daphne. Girl immediately perked up and went forward to welcome it. A man who looked like a deacon was helping a young man in luxurious clothes out of the carriage. Then, there was a beautiful girl. Daphne was a little surprised. The young man and the girl's identities were obviously much more noble. After the young man got out of the carriage, he looked around the surroundings. As for the beautiful girl, her face was slightly pale and stiff, as if she was unwilling. "Over there, do we have to line up to enter?" the young man suddenly asked. Oh, that's one of our circus's performances. It can be considered a performance," Daphne stammered. "For the details, you can read the signboard." Metatro blinked, but Babalia, who was beside him, seemed to be very displeased with the bunny girl's attitude and was about to reprimand her. "Babalia, that small black tent looks quite interesting. Arrange it for me." "Yes, young master." The deacon had to restrain his anger and walked to the front of the line calmly. "Hey, you need flyers to enter," Daphne shouted at this time. 3 flyers. Madanzo took out 3 flyers. "Check it. If there's no problem, we'll all go in." No problem." Daphne nodded and then seemed to think of something. "There's actually nothing to see in the tent over there. Why don't we just go in? The performance is about to start." Daphne saw that the beautiful girl beside her was winking at her and shaking her head nervously. Daphne didn't understand what was going on, but she didn't say anything else. "What's your name?" Madanzo suddenly asked with a smile. The young girl, Kaliana, instantly became nervous, afraid that this pure-blooded noble would do something to this weak girl. "Daphne." "Daphne?" Madanzo blinked and then smiled faintly. "I think I've seen you somewhere before, Miss Daphne. You're really pretty." Thank you." "Young master, it's all arranged. You can go in." Deacon Babalia had already walked back quickly. The words he brought back made Daphne's expression change, and she subconsciously looked in the direction of the small black tent. There were many empty seats in the line in front of the small tent. The audience in the line seemed to have a trace of fear and wariness, and they even lowered their heads. The girl looked at this young master in shock and confusion. "Perhaps we'll meet again soon." Madanzo smiled mysteriously and strode toward the small black tent. Babalia quickly followed. Kaliana hesitated for a moment, but in the end she seemed to accept her fate and followed behind Babalia. The people's gazes were filled with— actually, the people's gazes couldn't be seen at all because they were all lowering their heads. Because of their special privileges, they couldn't see the gazes of mortals at all. Perhaps because of their special privileges, they didn't need to care about the gazes of mortals. It didn't make much of a difference whether they looked or not. A man with a satisfied smile on his face opened the curtain of the small black tent and walked out. Then, Babalia instantly grabbed him by the collar and pulled him to the side. The man was shocked and then angry. He was about to fight back, but he quickly lost all his strength and fell to the ground. Madanzo didn't care. After Kaliana waited in place, she walked directly into the small black tent. A weak and lazy voice slowly sounded at this time. "Next. Okay, look at my face. Okay, look at my chest. Okay, look at my legs. 1, 2, 3, okay, cover your eyes. Okay, lie down. Okay, we'll charge by the second. Start." Even though Shiri was used to seeing all kinds of things, he couldn't help but be moved. His eyes widened and his mouth gaped. In front, a bunny girl was sitting on a stool, looking down at a magazine, yawning from time to time. "Why aren't you going up? You'll have to pay for looking at more," the bunny girl said impatiently, looking up and blinking. What are you doing?" Madanzo was the first to break the silence. "Senior!" In an instant, the bunny girl's emotions exploded, and she ran over with grievances. "Senior, I'm so miserable. Senior!" After a bizarre explanation, Madanzo squatted on the ground and looked at a black stick that was vibrating up and down crazily. "So, you're using this thing?" "Hello, I'm Automatic Juice Press Taro number 1. Nice to meet you. This thing has a mouth and eyes. Madanzo was even more amazed. There's no need to teach me. Chapter 2201. Automatic Juicy Squeezing Taro Number 1, or Juicy Taro, for short. At this moment, Juicy Taro was still in an excited state. Madanzo couldn't take it anymore, and she said in a slightly shrill voice, "Can you stop this thing?" "Why?" Yulia said in surprise. "I still have work to do. Juicy Taro has just entered the state. This guy is surprisingly slow to warm up." "You love your job?" Madanzo said in disbelief. The senior said pitifully, "If I don't do my job well, I will be kicked out of the circus." It wasn't easy for me to get close to the title of main character. The air was still filled with the smell of heather, and Madanzo couldn't take it anymore. "Okay, I will take care of this. Now, stop this thing. Right now." Yulia had no choice but to draw a few runes in the air to remove the star creation technique on the black stick. This thing was a temporary product of the star creation technique, and she didn't want this thing to accompany her for a long time. In her small star creation realm, there were too many similar products on display. Moreover, they had complete functions and were of a suitable size. Most importantly, this thing had already been used by many people. Thus, Juicy Taro, who had just been born, died of old age. He fell to the ground and returned to his original appearance as a black stick. So, this is the star creation technique? It's quite magical. Madanzo couldn't help but take a few more glances. Yulia shrugged. It's just a small trick. It can only be used temporarily to trick people. By the way, senpai, what do you plan to do next? Madanzo smiled mysteriously and walked out of the small black tent. Soon, in front of the small black tent, the noble Deacon Babalia loudly announced that the bunny girl in the small black tent was the personal product of the pure-blood noble Count Decria. According to the law of the world, anyone who dared to covet the private property of a noble would be sent to the guillotine. The spectators who hadn't had a good time, yet could only be angry but didn't dare to say anything. They didn't even take a second look as they scattered in all directions in fear. Senpai Yulia's problem seemed to have been solved in an instant. "Senior, how did you become a pure-blood aristocrat? Let's talk as we walk." Madanzo walked towards the big tent where the circus was performing. "You said nobles?" At the backstage of the circus, Mr. J, who was putting on eye makeup for himself, put down the eyeliner pen in his hand and looked a little absent-minded. "That's right. That noble immediately announced that Yulia was his property." Mr. Qingtian nodded and said, "But why would a noble come to such a remote seaside town? Leader, what do you think of this?" "What can I say? Isn't it good to become the property of a noble?" The leader said calmly, "She doesn't have to wander around with us. She can earn some hard-earned money and enjoy a luxurious life. That's probably the dream of most girls." Mr. Qingtian smiled bitterly and said, "Leader, you know that no matter how beautiful a woman is, she won't last long in the hands of those nobles. Pure-blood aristocrats aren't allowed to have real interactions with commoners." "So what? It's already announced by a noble. Do you still want to take it away?" The leader looked at Mr. Qingtian expressionlessly. "We're a proper circus." Mr. Qingtian rolled his eyes. "If there's nothing else, I'll go and arrange for the performance." However, many spectators were scared away by that noble tonight. The leader picked up the eyeliner pen and waved his hand. Mr. Qingtian didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out directly. "It seems that the performance has started. From the looks of it, there shouldn't be any spectators coming." Daphne looked at the position of the big tent. The lights had begun to flicker, and the applause was very obvious. A girl thought for a while and began to pack up the things at the reception booth. Tonight, a girl didn't have the task of assisting in the performance on stage. The whole city was acting as a support staff. Later, according to Mr. Qingtian's arrangement, a girl Had to sell drinks and other things to the audience to generate income for the circus. I can't be in a daze. Daphne secretly cheered herself up. When the girl passed by the small black tent, a girl hesitated for a moment. Finally, she looked around and carefully opened the tent and walked in. Huh? So it's here. In the small black tent, other than a temporary bed made of wooden planks, there was only a small stool not far away and a magazine placed on the stool. However, it was easy to see the things that were discarded on the ground. I finally found the training device I borrowed from Mr. Katz. Daphne showed a smile of finding something she had lost. Then, she frowned. Why did she feel that there was a very indescribable smell on this thing? Daphne was a little surprised. She felt that this small black tent was once filled with some kind of wild and evil thoughts. Girl subconsciously shivered and quickly left the small black tent. However, a girl quickly felt that she seemed to have bumped into something. It was hard. It felt like she had bumped into the strong Mr. Katz, who always wore armor and never showed his true face. Daphne subconsciously turned around. What came into view was a shiny silver armor, but it was obviously not Mr. Katz. You are. Daphne couldn't help but be stunned. Then, a heavy blow hit Girl's body. Girl instantly blacked out and fell to the ground. Qingtian, the circus's beast tamer. Her colleague is the circus's personnel manager. Katz, who is preparing to go on stage, is a strength performer. Taramaru, the beast tamer, Qingtian's partner. In the audience, Yulia, who had become a noble's property, was carefully pointing out a few permanent and important supporting roles to Madanzo. There's also a bluebird? The bluebird is the vice captain. Usually, it won't go on stage. It's always on the roof. It's responsible for monitoring the audience below to see if there's anyone sneaking around. Yulia said with great familiarity, the last one is the main character. He's the captain and is called J. He's a magician and usually appears at the end. He should be preparing backstage now. You'll see him soon, senpai. The two of them whispered to each other in the auditorium, but they didn't try to lower their voices, because the seats around them were completely empty. This was a privilege enjoyed by nobles. In Babalia's view, the young master didn't empty all the seats. Instead, he gave half of them to the civilians for entertainment. This was already a great gift. Miss Kaliana, where are you going? The noble's deacon suddenly asked at this time. Kaliana, who had just lifted her skirt at this time, instantly sat down stiffly. I plan to go to the toilet. Bear with it. Babalia said indifferently. Without the young master's permission, you can't go anywhere. How can I bear with it? The beautiful half-elf girl couldn't help but be slightly angry at this time. This is not my business, the noble's deacon said coldly. In addition, you'd better not have any bad thoughts because you are already the young master's property. For property that escapes privately, nobles have the right to end everything. Kaliana didn't give up and said, You see, the young master already has a new lover. He won't care about me. Mr. Babalia, if you don't let me go, I will be grateful to you. Obediently wait, live. The noble's deacon's eyes were cold. Leave, die. Kaliana instantly shuddered. I'm afraid, the number of civilians who died tragically in this guy's hands is not small. Damn noble's lackey. Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out from a part of the spectator seat. This scream instantly interrupted Mr. Fairski, who was in the middle of his beast-taming performance. He frowned as he looked at the spectator seat. Behind the spectator seats, there were 4 warriors in bright silver armor standing there without him noticing. There were more than 4 warriors. At this time, more warriors wearing bright silver armor were pouring in at this time. Mr. Qingtian's expression instantly sank. It's the world government's cavalry. Purge Knights. Why are they here? Soon, in the audience, someone recognized the identity of the armored warriors that quickly appeared one after another. Because of this, the atmosphere in the big tent seemed to be frozen. Purge Knights. The world government's cavalry. The guardians of the absolute privilege of the pure-blood nobles. The loyal purge knights would mercilessly eliminate all the dangerous people who harmed the nobles' interests like machines. Subconsciously, the audience in the big tent all looked at the domineering noble young master. Could it be that these purge knights were brought here by this noble young master? However, they saw that Madanzo, who was sitting in the audience seat, looked natural at this time. He had seen all kinds of storms before. Silence. A loud and vigorous voice sounded, and it came from a guy who seemed to be the leader of the purge knights. At the same time, 2 knights cut open the door of the big tent, and then 4 purge knights slowly brought in a luxurious chair. On the chair, there was a handsome young man with a bandage on his forehead, and he looked very impatient. "Kneel!" The leader of the purge knights shouted again in a deep voice. The audience in the audience seat shuddered in fear and chose to kneel on the ground. They lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak or look. "All of you are guilty!" The leader of the purge knights shouted coldly and pulled out his longsword, pointing it at a corner of the audience seat. That was Madanzo's seat. "How dare you?" Butler Babalia quickly stood up and said, "Purge Knight, do you know that even you, a knight, can be executed by pointing a sword at a pure-blood noble?" As he spoke, Babalia took out a special golden badge from his bosom. "This is—" The Purge Knight looked up in surprise, and his body seemed to tremble slightly. He subconsciously looked at the young man in luxurious clothes sitting on the luxurious chair behind him. The young man looked even more impatient and he shouted coldly, "Babalia, are you crazy? Can't you see who I am?" "I don't care who you are." Babalia froze for a second, surprised that the young man could call out his name. However, he soon stood firm and said, "But the one sitting here is the honorable pure-blood noble, Count de Crea." "He's de Crea? Then who am I?" The young man in luxurious clothes froze for a moment before he yelled furiously, "Babalia, you're crazy! Catch him! Damn it! I'll punish this servant who dares to go against his master." The Purge Knights instantly pulled out their swords, and 4 of them dashed past the audience seat and charged at Babalia. However, Babalia snorted coldly. He wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he stomped on the ground and dashed forward with his body lowered. Facing the attacks of 4 Purge Knights, he was able to handle them with ease. This guy's combat strength was surprisingly high. Out of the 4 Purge Knights, 2 of them were instantly knocked to the ground. "Damn it!" The young man in luxurious clothes looked at the leader of the Purge Knights in anger. Babalia was the runner-up of the Saint Land sword competition 5 years ago. How can you deal with him with so few people? The leader of the Purge Knights immediately waved his hand and said, "Annihilator, attack!" Instantly, another 6 Purge Knights lifted the armor on their legs and pulled out strange guns that were as long as their arms. Seeing this, Babalia frowned slightly, but he quickly pulled himself back. With a shake of his sleeve, a round short stick appeared in his hand. He gripped it with both hands, and the round short stick shot out an incandescent light beam that was 1 meter long. While the Purge Knights were shooting, Babalia was also waving the strange sword in his hand. The attacks from the Annihilator were all blocked or deflected to the side by Babalia's sword. Sparks flew in all directions in the spectator seats. Fortunately, the spectator seats had already been cleared, so there were no casualties for the time being. However, the power of the Annihilator was enough to make the civilians kneeling on the ground tremble in fear. Force. F***CK. Senior sister Yulia couldn't help but blink, and she subconsciously asked, "Senior, isn't this a rural world? You can still use your ability in a rural world?" Madanzo said grumpily, "Didn't I say before we came here that this world doesn't restrict our ability that much?" Senior sister Yulia was absent-minded and muttered to herself, I knew it. The goddess of luck hates me the most. What happened to the dragon riding on the face?" Madanzo didn't care. She just stared at the weapons used in the battle and muttered, "Annihilator? Sword? It seems that this should be the reason why humans can end the mythological war. Or is it just one of the reasons? The battle continued and became more intense. The number of purge knights shooting had doubled, and Babalia was getting a little overwhelmed. Instantly, Babalia's shoulder was pierced by the Annihilator, revealing a horrifying burn wound. However, this former runner-up of the Holy Land in swordsmanship gritted his teeth and didn't fall. He swore to protect his master with his life. The young man in luxurious clothes was even angrier. He shouted that he would kill Babalia on the spot. Stop! Madanzo suddenly stood up under senior sister Yulia's surprised gaze. Although these weapons were powerful, they didn't affect the two of them much. However, there didn't seem to be a reason for them to act so quickly. I surrender. Metatro raised both his hands in the air. Young master? Babalia screamed subconsciously. His face was full of shock. Madanzo said with a smile, Honorable noble, I'm guilty. I'm the one who hit you, and I accept my punishment. Please let these innocent people go. Senior?